I'm Voldemort Chapter 1, C1 Beginning. All alone inside a single bedroom of Wool's orphanage, lay a sleeping boy around 11 years old with pitch-black hair. If his eyes lids were to open, his bright red eyes could almost brighten up the room. A/N, looks like the cover photo. The boy looks so peaceful as he sleeps, but every other child in the orphanage knows that he's anything but peaceful. This boy is a menace that would use anybody to get what he wants, and God forbid someone gets on his bad side. He once killed a fellow orphan's cat because she would call him names and the cat hissed at him. That wasn't the only time he did something horrible to someone in the orphanage, and it certainly wasn't the worst. The problem is there's never any proof that he did anything, but everyone knew it was him. If asked why they thought it was him, almost everyone would reply, "There's just something off about him." There's a reason this boy is sleeping alone in his own room, and that is because the matron doesn't trust him alone with the other children. Not after he made a child break their arm with words alone. That's right, he made the poor child snap his arm and didn't even have to deploy any of his powers to do so. Yes, that's right. This boy has powers. When his emotions are high and or he feels threatened, his power would rise to the surface and cause chaos. He has tried his hardest to study his powers and take a hold of them, but that's easier said than done. He has been trying to move things with his powers recently as a way to start training them. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but with every added day of training, it feels like it becomes easier for him. He can also talk to animals, or at least the snakes in the garden. A few years ago, he was sitting alone in the garden when he heard someone talking, yet no one was anywhere near him. It wound up being a snake hidden in a bush close by. When he tried speaking to the snake, it called him a speaker and started acting very respectfully. At first, he thought the snake was speaking English, but it was actually hissing, and he had been hissing as well. As the sun rises through the windows, the boy opens his red eyes and squints. He hates mornings and everything that comes with them. The breakfast the orphanage served is plain, and the fact that everyone wants to say good morning infuriated the boy. Every time someone says good morning, the boy would think, "No, it's not a good morning, so leave me alone." He wouldn't say it out loud as long as no one pestered him too much. The matron would jump at the chance to punish him for stepping out of line. I break a few kids' bones and now I can't even breath out of tone, or the matron would start hounding me. Maybe I should just kill her. Nah, I don't want to be homeless if they close the orphanage because of her death. He sighed and got out of bed. When the boy was about to start cleaning himself up and change clothes, a tap could be heard from the window. Sat outside the window is a brown owl holding a letter. The owl is tapping its beak on the glass as if asking for the boy to open the window. The boy stared at the owl in confusion for a moment. Is the letter for me? He thought. No one has ever sent him letters. Especially not one delivered by an owl. He hesitantly opens the window and takes the letter from the owl. Once the letter left the owl's care, it flies off into the sky and disappears past the clouds. The letter is addressed to Mr. Thomas M. Riddle, so it has to be a letter for him. What is odd about the letter is that it's addressed to the single bedroom of Wool's orphanage, London. Why was it addressed so specifically? With curiosity getting the better of him, Tom opens the letter and started reading. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Armando Dippet. Dear Mr. Riddle, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. The term begins on September 1st. A member of the Hogwarts staff will arrive in 1 week to answer any of your questions. They will also be escorting you to get supplies for the school year to come. Yours sincerely, Albus Dumbledore, Deputy Headmaster. Second page. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, 4-day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, with silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. Long list of books here. Other equipment. 1 wand. 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2. 1 set glass or crystal vials. 1 telescope. 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring, if they desire, an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomstick. Yours sincerely, Lucinda Thomsonical Pocus, Chief Attendant of Witchcraft Provisions. The second Tom finished reading the letter, a pain racked his mind that sent him barreling towards the floor. The pain was so great that the screams that exited Tom's mouth woke everyone in the orphanage. After a few moments of rolling around and screaming on the wood floor, the door to the room bursts open, and the matron enters with a worried expression. She thought for sure that Tom was torturing a fellow orphan or some animal. As she entered the room filled with screams, the matron saw Tom rolling around the floor screaming with his hands clutching his head. Although she is wary of the boy, she couldn't stop herself from dashing to the boy's side to check on him. She is a matron of an orphanage, after all. She could never leave a child in pain, not even Tom Riddle. After trying her best to comfort the boy and looking for what's wrong, the matron could see no injuries or any signs of where the pain could be coming from. The screams haven't ended since she entered. In fact, the screams are getting louder as time goes on. Not knowing what to do, the matron placed Tom in his bed and left the room to contact a doctor. Meanwhile, something incredible is happening within young Tom Riddle. Tom's dark evil soul is somehow fusing with a bright white pure soul. The fusion is like dumping a cup of water into a pot of burning hot oil. The reaction is very fiery, hence the pain Tom is going through. Although the reaction is very painful, the fusion happens slowly and the two souls become one. The new soul that resides in Tom Riddle's body is now a gray soul. Not good or evil but simply neutral. This type of soul is rare and seldom appears. A few minutes after the matron leaves Tom screaming in the room alone, the screams die down and Tom falls into a peaceful sleep once again. Chapter 2, C2 merge. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. When Tom awoke from his sleep, his head was aching, but he could barely understand the change that happened to him. After getting used to the dull pain in his head, Tom sat up in bed and just stared at the wall. As he stared at the wall, memories from the 2 merged souls play in his mind. He feels as if he has lived as both Tom Riddle and this other soul. The memories of both lives play in his mind as he relives everything either person has ever experienced. While in this state, the matron enters the room and sees that Tom is awake. She immediately turns around and leaves the room to inform the doctor. Tom didn't notice her at all, as he is too preoccupied with the memories that are integrating into his mind. He didn't know that their souls merged, but he does have the memories of another life inside his head. The memories that are now in his mind are of a boy named Gregory. Gregory lived in a world similar to his and died whilst crossing the street. Both of their memories had nothing to explain how they ended up merging though. That's right, merging. Tom isn't just Tom anymore. He may go by that name from now on, but he is a mixture of both Gregory and Tom. I guess that would make him a new person. The feeling of being 2 people and living such separate lives is definitely an odd one. How could Greg's consciousness make its way here to this universe? Instead of dimension hopping, it could be some sort of time travel. Maybe it's one of my past lives that I'm remembering somehow. Does this have something to do with that odd letter? He thinks and something clicks in his mind as he remembers the letter. That letter was addressed to Tom M. Riddle. Hogwarts. The letter said that the school is called Hogwarts. Oh my god, I'm in the Harry Potter universe. This is just like those fanfictions I've read as Gregory. Gregory must have transmigrated into Tom and now here we are. Isn't the person being transmigrated supposed to take over the body though? I don't think I've ever read a fanfiction where they merge. Whatever, it's not like I can do anything about it. At least I'm not Harry. That boy had to deal with way too much sh*t from a young age. Tom Riddle may not have had it good, but I can work with this. From now on I'm Tom Riddle. I don't quite agree with the things the old Tom has done, but I'll just have to move past it. I may not agree with what he did, but I couldn't care less about the fact that he did it, and I certainly won't be apologizing for it. Tom was good at covering his tracks anyway, so I probably have nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the door to Tom's room slams open, and in walks a worried-looking matron followed by an elderly man with a stethoscope hanging on his neck. The man moves to Tom's side and starts asking him question after question. How are you feeling? Do you know who you are? Where you are? Why did your head hurt so much? Did you eat anything funny? Throughout these non-stop questions, the matron stood over me with a worried expression. Once Tom answered every question given by the doctor, he says that Tom probably just had a really bad migraine and to let him know if it happens again. When the doctor finally left, the matron brought me food and told me to rest. Dinner was pretty disgusting compared to the foods Gregory used to eat. The old Tom was used to the orphanage's horrible food, but now it makes him want to throw up. He knew that if he wasted this food, he wouldn't get any more as the orphanage isn't exactly rolling in money. With the thought that eating bad food is better than starving constantly repeating in his mind, Tom tries to eat as quickly as possible to get it over with. Once his plate was empty, it was time to come up with a game plan. Dumbledore will be arriving in a week and he needs to come up with a plan. 1. He needs to get a book on occlumency to protect his future knowledge. A lot of fan fictions that he's read say that the twinkle in Dumbledore's eye is him using legilimency to read someone's mind. Tom already knows that Dumbledore is going to be suspicious of him. The matron and the kids will probably say something about him, so there's a big chance that he will read my mind or at least try to. The question is, how will Tom learn occlumency in just 1 week? He could try to learn occlumency from scratch without any help, but that would take far longer than it would if he had a book that explained it. This brings Tom to the conclusion that he needs to go to Diagon Alley. He needs to buy a book on occlumency in order to study and get his mind protected. There is only one problem: Tom has no idea where to find the place. Even if he knew where it was, he had no way of getting there other than walking, and that could only happen if he's able to sneak out somehow. Suddenly, an idea sparks to life in Tom's head. It may not work, but it's worth a try. If it does work, then he will have a book on occlumency by the end of the day. It's worth a try. He thinks as he opens his mouth to speak. If there are any house elves that haven't bonded with a family, I'm interested in becoming your master. Tom stated out loud and wait for a couple of moments for any type of response. Pop. Mimsy is looking for a master to serve. Chapter 3, C3 Mimsy the house elf. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Pop. Mimsy is looking for a master to serve. With the sound of a pop, a young-looking house elf dressed in a pillowcase appears. Based on the bows made of rags tied around both of its ears, it's a safe bet that this elf is a girl. It's hard to tell with elves sometimes, as they all kind of look the same. Their names don't help much either. Hello, Mimsy, I'm Tom Riddle. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Tom says as he looks at the real house elf before him. Mimsy is a young elf. She is the daughter of elves from a house of bad masters. They don't treat Mimsy's parents good at all, so Mimsy ran away and has been hungry ever since. She says, and Tom nods in agreement, as she does look like she hasn't eaten in a while. Why haven't you been eating? Can't you just steal food with magic? Tom asks in confusion. House elves don't be eaten human foods. She shakes her head. We eats the leftover magic from our masters. Mimsy never had a master, so I've never ate nothing in forever. Mimsy says as she holds her stomach and looks at Tom with expectant eyes. What useful parasites these house elves are. They offer themselves as slaves for leftover magic that no one would ever use. Tom thinks. Well, I'm willing to take you in as my house elf, but before that, do you still have access to the bad master's house? Tom asks, hoping to rob them of some much-needed books and supplies. No, if Mimsy try and go back, the pain comes and then I gotta leave, or else it gets worse. She says as she grimaced at the memory of when she wanted to visit her parents. They must have taken you off the wards. Tom says as he shakes his head in disappointment. All right, I guess we can bond now. How do we do it? He asks. You just has to put your hand on Mimsy's head and say you wish to be her master. Mimsy explains. Tom does as she says, and with his hand on her head he speaks the words. I wish to be Mimsy's master. Tom says, and they both glow slightly. Interesting, I feel as though we have some sort of a connection now. He says in a bit of wonder. Mimsy's condition looked to improve constantly. The look on her face is that of pure bliss. I guess my magic tastes good and it must be healthy for her as she's healing rather quickly from her former malnourished state. Are you feeling better now? Tom asks and receives a happy nod. Yes, master. Master's magic is very tasty. Mimsy says as she smiles contently. Good to hear. Are you feeling well enough to take me somewhere? Tom asks as she perks up. Mimsy will gladly do anything for Master. She says excitedly. Good, I need you to pop me over to Gringotts Bank. I have some business there to take care of. Once we're finished there, I'll most likely have some errands for you to run for me. Tom says and Mimsy nodded along happily. Mimsy can do that. Does Master want to leave now? She asks excitedly. Do you know what time Gringotts closes? Tom asks and Mimsy shakes her head. No, but Mimsy will find out. She says and disappears with a pop. Before Tom could fully process what happened, Mimsy returned with a smile on her face. The mean goblins say the bank be closin' at 9 p.m. She said, happy that she is helping her new master. That's good, but next time ask for permission before popping off like that. I can't have my cards shown because you act a bit too overzealous. Tom says with a hint of disapproval in his voice. Sorry, Master. Mimsy just wants to help. Mimsy says as her ears go down like a dejected dog. I'm glad to accept your help, Mimsy. Just ask before you act next time, all right? Tom says in a comforting manner. Yes, Master. Mimsy won't let you down, she promises. She wipes her tears and stands a bit taller, ready to take on whatever task her master can throw at her. That's good to hear, Mimsy. We need to set some ground rules though. Tom says and Mimsy nods. First, I'm currently living in a Muggle orphanage, so unless I'm alone, hide unless I call you out. Even if the person with me is a witch or wizard, you must stay hidden no matter what. Do you understand? She nods her head in comprehension. Second, everything that is talked about between us stays between us. If another elf or anyone comes to speak with you about me or anything, you make an excuse to leave and come tell me about it immediately. Master's secrets be safe with Mimsy no matter what. She states resolutely. Good, I've heard that some elves aren't treated well. I will treat you perfectly fair as long as you're loyal and work hard. Any mistakes that happen are easily forgiven, so just come to me if you have any problems, all right? Tom says and Mimsy starts crying on the spot. Seeing his new elf start wailing, Tom gets up and covers her mouth. He wanted to win the elf's loyalty, not cause the whole orphanage to investigate why someone's crying in his room. I know you're happy about all of this, but if you cry any louder the Muggles will come to see what's happening. Tom says and Mimsy's eyes widen as she stops crying. Sorry, Master. She says as her ears lower just like before. No problem, just be careful from now on. She nods, happy that she found such a kind and understanding master. All right, every child has to be in bed by 7 p.m., so we will go to Gringotts around 7:30 p.m. just to be safe. Tom says, not wanting the matron to find out he left. Should Mimsy start hiding now, or does Master needs anything? Mimsy asked, ready to serve at a moment's notice. I have a job for you. If you're feeling up for it. Tom responds. Mimsy is up for it, Master. She says excitedly. Good, this job shouldn't be too hard for you. You just have to use your magic to acquire some currency for me. Tom says with an evil smile forming on his lips. Chapter 4, C4 Mimsy's Day Out. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. In a crowded street filled with people rushing home from a long day of work, multiple people are screaming and yelling for the police. Pickpocket. Police. My purse. It's gone. Where is my wallet? Police. Someone stole my wallet. Help. My purse. Someone stole it. Did anyone see who stole my wallet? These screams kept increasing by the second until about 20% of the crowd was up in arms. Unseen and unheard by anyone on the street is the young house elf, Mimsy. A sack over her shoulder filled with the wallets and purses of every one of her victims. A happy smile on her face as she has completed her master's task. Her kind and beloved master has given her a task and she will go through hell to complete it. She was told to find the busiest street in London and rob a good chunk of the people on it. Her master told her not to go overboard and only steal from ever 20 out of 100 people. She was also told to aim for the more well-dressed and wealthy-looking among the crowd. There's no need to cause too much of a fuss. Her master didn't want the Aurors to be notified. With her elf magic, this task was like taking candy from a baby. With her sack filled high with the loot of her victims, Mimsy pops away, leaving chaos in her wake. Shortly after she leaves, the police fill the streets. Never have so many people been pickpocketed at once. So many people contacted the police that the street was blocked off. After taking every victim's statement, it was estimated that whichever group pulled this off made almost £25,000. The police were stumped as no one saw anything and no evidence was left behind. Back at the orphanage, Tom is sat on his bed waiting patiently for Mimsy's return. He sent her out to get him some money. He has a small stash saved up from old Tom, but it's better to have as much as possible. Especially before heading to Gringotts. If anything he's read as Gregory is true, goblins are a greedy bunch that only answer to coin. Tom just knows that the conversion from pound to galleon will be a total rip-off. This is why he is trying to stack up as much money as possible before he leaves. Tom wanted to steal from some drug dealers or something, but that would need some prior investigating. He has no idea where he can find drug dealers or gang members. Being an orphan doesn't allow for much time outside the orphanage. Then he thought of stealing from a bank. All Mimsy would have to do is become invisible, which she can do, and pop into the nearest bank for a withdrawal. That idea sounded far too easy. There is no way that the magical world doesn't have a defense against something like this. If they didn't, then Tom would be extremely surprised. Although, he can't take that kind of risk. With those two ideas gone from his checklist, Tom settled on going old school. He sent Mimsy out to pick the pockets of the richest people she could see, on the busiest street during the time everyone is rushing home from work. This was the next best plan that Tom could come up with. It fit his time constraints perfectly and should net him a healthy sum of money. He didn't need millions of pounds, just enough to get what he wants from the goblins. After waiting for 30 minutes, a pop could be heard and Mimsy had returned. When Tom saw her, he almost busted out laughing on the spot. This house elf is carrying a sack 3 times her size over her shoulder like Santa Claus. The smile on her face was blinding as she sets the sack down. It tips over and a cascade of wallets and purses come falling out. Mimsy stares at Tom with a proud smile and awaits her master's praise. Tom didn't disappoint, as he got up and pats her bald elf head. "Good job, Mimsy. No one saw you right?" he asks just to be sure. "No, Mimsy did everything as master explained," she says with a proud smile as she leans into her head pats. "Good, I wasn't wrong to take you as my elf," Tom says and sits back down. Those words sent tingles up Mimsy's spine as she squealed in delight. Her master appreciates her hard work. This is the total opposite of how the bad masters treat her parents. "Now, I need you to take all of the cash out of the wallets and purses. After you've done that, I need you to deliver the wallets and purses to a dumpster. Preferably a dumpster near the area you stole them from. The police should be searching the area, so they can return these to their owners," Tom says, and Mimsy gets to work. Once Mimsy left to drop the wallets and purses off, Tom got to counting the fat stack of cash she left behind. Mimsy returned before he could finish, but he didn't trust her to count the money. She hasn't been to school and will just end up messing it up. It's doubtful that she even knows the name of Muggle currency. When he finally finished counting, he has £24,623 and 5p. Adding in the money saved by old Tom, and he now has £24,780 and 20p. This little move made him a lot more money than he thought he would get. It's too bad that he won't be able to do this again anytime soon. A one-time occurrence can easily be written off as skilled Muggle thieves, but if it were to happen over and over, that is when the Aurors will start becoming suspicious. Tom doesn't need that suspicion. He'll get enough of it when Dumbledore arrives. Tom hides the money under a loose floorboard where old Tom used to hide his money. With his plan completed, Tom looks outside to see the sun has completely gone down. "All right, it's getting late. Mimsy, I need you to hide until I call you out. The matron will be making her rounds to put everyone to bed soon," Tom says as he makes sure the floorboard is properly covered. "Yes, sir," she says and pops away. Chapter 5, C5 Dress to Impress. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at Chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Once the matron arrived, she questioned Tom on how he's feeling, but still kept her distance. She may worry for him as a child, but that doesn't erase the past encounters with old Tom. The wariness built inside of her won't crumble that easily. It's been built on 11 years of raising this child, so her actions are justified. After asking her questions, Tom was told to get to bed. Tom went straight to bed and tucked himself in, hoping she would leave as quickly as possible. Seeing that Tom was all right and in bed, the matron left to attend to the other children. Tom didn't even leave his bed when the matron left the room, not trusting the squeaky floorboards to give him away. Instead, he called for Mimsy, and with a pop, she appeared at his bedside. "Yes, master?" she asked. "Climb on the bed, Mimsy. I don't want the matron to hear you walking on the floor," Tom says, and Mimsy looks apprehensive. "Master, elves can't be goin' on the master's beds," she says as she is torn between what she was taught and following her master's orders. "Mimsy, get on this bed right now before you ruin my plans," Tom says as he puts a bit more seriousness in his voice. With an uneasy look on her face, Mimsy climbs on the bed and sits facing her master. She looks truly anxious, just sitting there not knowing what to do with herself. "Good, now do you have a spell that can mute the sound of the floorboards?" "Hell, mute any sound from leaving the room if you can," Tom asks. Seeing her way out of this alarming situation, Mimsy doesn't even answer as she snaps her fingers and mutes any sound from leaving the room in any direction. With that taken care of, she swiftly leaves the bed as quickly as possible. Her feet hitting the floor causes a thud and the floorboards squeak, but that sound doesn't transfer outside of the room. "I take it you muted the sound from leaving the room?" Tom asks, hoping she didn't just jump off the bed and alert the matron. Mimsy nods her head and looks sad at her earlier behavior. Sorry, master." Elves is taught to not be on the master's bed, so Mimsy didn't know what to do. She apologized as her ears flop over as usual when she's sad. "It's fine, Mimsy. Just remember to try your best to follow my orders next time, okay?" Tom says, and Mimsy nods happily. Once the sound problem was taken care of, Tom looked for a suitable outfit to wear to Gringotts. His wardrobe is that of an orphan, so he doesn't have the finest of clothes. In fact, most of his clothes are hand-me-downs or donations to the orphanage. Not finding anything that would look nice, he enlists Mimsy to go and steal him some clothes and shoes. He gave her his sizes and told her the colors he likes, which were mainly blacks, grays, whites, dark browns, and dark blues. For the next half an hour, Mimsy would come and go with piles of clothes. Mimsy would pop away and steal some clothes for him to go through, and anything he didn't like would be sent back. Once it was time to leave, Tom ended his at-home shopping spree and got dressed. He wore a long-sleeve black button-up shirt tucked into slim dark gray slacks, a pair of dark brown leather boots with black socks, and a dark brown leather jacket. If you want to get anywhere in life, you must dress to impress. People tend to like good-looking people, and a way to look good is to dress smart. Tom could have gone to get some wizard robes, but he would rather not show his face too soon. What if when Dumbledore takes him to get clothes for school, the owner welcomes Tom as a repeat customer? That would just ruin everything. He wouldn't be able to send Mimsy either, as they have to take your measurements there if the first Harry Potter movie is anything to go by. Also, Tom sees wizarding fashion as outdated and not so appealing. Some may say that going to Gringotts is risky as well, but why would Tom have to go there? The only reason Harry had to go to Gringotts is that he had a trust vault to withdraw from for supplies. In the eyes of everyone else, Tom is a Muggle-born and does not need to go to Gringotts. He also plans to bribe the goblins to stay quiet on the off chance Dumbledore does take him to Gringotts. Hence the pickpocket plan that he sent Mimsy on. Once Tom was dressed and ready to go, he had Mimsy hide the pile of clothes somewhere. Can't have the matron questioning where a pile of brand new clothes came from. He then retrieves his money from the removable floorboard and stashes it in his jacket pocket. Tom then puts on a blank white porcelain mask to hide his face. He asked Mimsy to pick one up during the shopping spree. "All right, Mimsy. I'm ready to go," Tom says as he walks over to Mimsy. Master has to hold Mimsy's hand and not let go. Mimsy says, and Tom follows her directions. "All right, I'm ready," Tom says, and they pop away, leaving an empty dark room behind. Chapter 6, see 6 Gringotts. 1. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. With the sound of a pop, a well-dressed boy and a happy house elf appear in front of Gringotts Bank. These people are obviously Tom and Mimsy. Tom is trying to control the spinning in his head and the vomit threatening to exit his stomach. He manages to get himself under control rather quickly for his first time traveling via house elf. Most usually vacate their stomachs immediately and or fall on the ground. Tom must have a bit more self-control than the rest. The muggle clothes and the pure white porcelain mask draws attention from the passing witches and wizards. Some write him off as an eccentric kid, while others look down on him as a dirty muggle. Ignoring the stares from the people around him, Tom stares at the bank for a moment to take it all in. Seeing the 3-story pillared entrance with the words, Gringotts Bank, written on it, really brought it home that he was in the Harry Potter universe. As he's about to walk in, Tom sees the warning that is written in every fanfiction before the main character enters the bank. A/N, let's not break a time-honored tradition. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take, but do not earn, must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. Truly a chilling poem to scare away any would-be thieves. Tom may have read the poem before, but seeing it for real sends a chill up his spine. Who knows what dastardly traps are set up to protect the vaults of Gringotts, and that isn't even mentioning the dragons that are on guard. After swearing to himself that he wouldn't rob the goblins, at least not until he knows he can get away with it, he enters the bank with Mimsy following shortly behind him. The inside of the bank was fairly empty, as they will be closing within an hour or so. Tellers lined the left and the right with a beautiful chandelier hanging in the center of the room. Straight ahead was a single teller with an older goblin manning the desk. He must be the one in charge, Tom thought. Walking up to the teller in charge, every person and goblin eyed him as he passed. Once he arrived at the teller's desk, the goblin ignored him completely in favor of whatever he's been working on. Tom waited patiently for the goblin to finish his work as he thought this may happen. He wants to be angry or annoyed, but he expected this. Feeling that if he were to interrupt the goblin he would lose, Tom just stood there and waited patiently. After 10 minutes of waiting, the goblin finally addressed Tom's existence. What do you want? The goblin asks in a gruff manner. Tom didn't even speak and takes a piece of paper out of his pocket. He then hands the paper over to the goblin without opening his mouth at all. The aged goblin roughly snatches the paper and reads it. After reading the paper, the goblin thinks for a moment and motions for Tom to follow him. The goblin then leads Tom to a back door and through the hall's Gringotts to a secluded meeting room. Once they were alone in the room, the goblin speaks up. We're alone like you said, so hand over my money. The goblin says, and Tom throws him a stack of cash from his pocket. 1,000 pounds as promised. Tom says as the goblin starts counting the money. All right, it's all here. You've got your private meeting. Now, take off your mask so we can conduct whatever business you came here to get done. I don't do business with people I don't know, the goblin says resolutely. Seeing no other way to go about this, Tom takes off his mask, revealing his face to the goblin. Hello, I'm Tom Riddle. What may I address you as? Tom asks. The name's Aluk. Now that we're acquainted, why have you come to Gringotts Bank? Aluk asks. Firstly, I would like to exchange my muggle currency for wizarding currency, Tom says as he deposits the rest of his money on the meeting room table. That can be easily done. The conversion rate is £5 per galleon, 20p per sickle, and 1p per canute, he says and looks at Tom for confirmation. A/N, I'm just guessing on the conversion rate, so don't take it too seriously. With a nod from Tom, Aluk waves his hand, and the money that was on the table disappears. £23,780 and 20p converts into G4, 756 and S1. Can I offer you a bottomless bag to hold the large number of coins you'll be receiving? Aluk says with a bloodthirsty smirk. How much is it? Tom asks, knowing that he's about to be ripped off. Money conversion is most likely regulated by the Wizengamot, which is the magical government of Great Britain, so Tom doesn't think Aluk would try to short him there. Although, the bottomless bag is an entirely different story. 300 galleons. Aluk says as his murderous smile widens. Mimsy. Tom calls. Yes, master. She says as she stands beside her master. Go to one of the stores in Diagon and ask how much a bottomless bag is. Try the trunk shop first. Tom orders and Mimsy pops away. The smile that once filled Aluk's face disappeared the second Mimsy popped away. In its place, an annoyed scowl appeared. Tom just waited patiently and a moment later, Mimsy arrived with a happy smile on her face. Trunkman says 100 gallons for a normal bag and 200 for an anti-theft one. Mimsy says proudly as she completed a task given by her master. Thanks, Mimsy. Mimsy brightens her happy smile at her master's praise. I'll take my money without the bag. Tom says to Aluk. Aluk grunts in reply while waving his hand. A pile of galleons and a single sickle appear on the table. Tom takes G200 from the pile and pushes them to Mimsy. Take this to the trunkman and buy an anti-theft bottomless bag. Tom says and Mimsy pops away. Do you see what happened, Aluk? What? He answers as he grits his teeth. You just lost a sale because you tried to overcharge me. I don't like it when people F***ck with me. Especially when it comes to money, so will you continue to fuck with me, or can we interact like two civilized sentient beings? Chapter 7, C7 Gringotts, 2. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. After Tom's little speech, Aluk just stared at him for a moment. Neither side spoke as they just stared at one another in silence. Then the unthinkable happened. Aluk chuckled, and that chuckle turned into a small laugh. Tom was very surprised as he thought that Aluk would throw him out or something. While the goblin is laughing, Mimsy returns with a bottomless bag in hand. Tom motions for her to place the coins on the table into the bag. She snaps her finger and the coins are sucked into the bottomless bag. Mimsy then hands the bag to her master and stands at his side, ready to provide anything he may need. Haha, are you sure that you don't have some goblin ancestry? Aluk asks as his laughter calms down. No idea, but before we do any more business, I want an oath to be sworn between the both of us. Tom says and Aluk looks genuinely surprised at the offer. What kind of oath? Aluk asks. The oath would pretty much say that we wouldn't try to actively rip each other off or steal from each other. Likewise, any business dealings that involve us will be fair for both parties. I would also like for you to keep my identity and our meetings secret. In return, I will appoint you as my account manager. Tom explains and Aluk looks truly surprised. If any other wizard caught a goblin trying to overcharge them, they wouldn't even be on speaking terms anymore. Yet this boy in front of him wants to make an oath with him in which both parties would be forced to be fair to one another. Aluk has never met a wizard that would do something like this. To make an oath so easily and to a goblin as well. In Aluk's perspective, the boy before him is truly an anomaly. Maybe an anomaly worth investing in. Alright, you got yourself a deal, kid. Aluk replies. Good, now give me a pen and some paper to write down our oaths. Tom says and Aluk waves his hand. A stack of paper, a small pot of ink, and a quill appear before Tom. He's never written with a quill before, but he'll have to make do with what's given to him. After spending a good 10 minutes writing the perfect oath, he shows it to Aluk and they recite the oath together. The oath itself said in short that they can't rip one another off, nor could they instigate a separate party to do so either. Their business dealings would have to be conducted fairly and in good faith towards both parties. If either party were to hear of something that would negatively or positively affect the other, that party is to contact the other and sell said information for a fair price. Aluk was also sworn to secrecy about their meetings and any information about Tom including his identity. In return for said secrecy, Aluk was appointed the account manager for any of Tom's existing and future accounts created at Gringotts Bank. As Tom's account manager, Aluk is entitled to 4% of all incoming wealth. Which means any income Tom makes, Aluk gets a piece of. This was added to motivate Aluk to work hard in managing Tom's accounts. The more wealth he acquires for Tom, the more money Aluk will receive. This isn't something new for Goblin account managers, but the usual percentage agreed to is 2%. Tom is being very generous with Aluk. The best part about the oaths they took is that it's enforced by magic. If either of them breaks the oath, that person would be very likely to lose their magic. It doesn't matter whether you're a wizard or a goblin, no one wants their magic taken away from them. They could have also sworn on their lives if they wanted to. Breaking the oath in this circumstance would cause their own magic to attack the body and kill whoever broke the oath. Though neither of them was willing to make that oath, as death by magical suicide scares even the toughest goblin. With the oaths sworn, the only thing left to do is sign some official contracts. Aluk says and waves his hand, causing a stack of papers to appear. Where will these contracts be stored? I don't need some random goblin snooping into our business. Tom says as he needs to keep his secrecy. It's not the contracts he's wary of, it's the possibility of others having access to them. He knows the contracts are fair, as the oath they took will enforce fairness. No need to worry. These contracts will be kept safe in my own vault. No one has access but me, not even my mate is allowed entrance. Aluk reassures Tom as he. After speed reading the contracts just to be sure, Tom signs all of the papers. After Tom was done signing, it was Aluk's turn to sign and initial in a bunch of places as Tom did. Once they were finished, Aluk waves his hand, and the contracts double. I'll keep the originals in my vault and you can take the copies. Put them in your bottomless bag for now, and you can store them in your vault once we've opened one for you. Aluk says and Tom stores his papers away. Aluk waves his hand again and the originals disappear, presumably to his vault for safekeeping. Now, why have you come to Gringotts today, besides the money exchange and recruiting an account manager? I need a few things actually, but first I would like to request an inheritance test. Tom says and Aluk nods his head as if he expected this. I see, that's easily done for a price, but don't get your hopes up. Many Muggleborns come for inheritance tests hoping to have some rich noble ancestors. I've never seen any tests return with happy news. Most waste their money on the fee and leave with nothing to show for it. Aluk warns, hoping to lower Tom's expectations. Don't worry, Aluk. I'm merely curious about my ancestry. I'm an orphan, after all. Tom replies, knowing that he'll at least be related to the Gaunts. All right, the test will cost 100 galleons. Aluk says with a smirk and Tom pays without batting an eye. This test could make him the heir to the most ancient and noble house of Slytherin, not just some rundown inbred Gaunt family. He would be willing to pay 10 times that price to take the test. Chapter 8, see 8 Gringotts, 3. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Once Tom paid the 100 galleons, Aluk waves his hand causing a knife and bowl to appear on the table. Hold your hand over the bowl and cut your palm with the knife. The knife is enchanted so that any cut sustained will heal after a few moments. Aluk instructs. Will there be any leftover blood? If so, what happens to it? Tom asks as he stares at the dagger warily. He doesn't know if there's some sort of blood magic out there, and he certainly doesn't want his blood used in anything of the sort. Aluk sees his reaction and does his best to reassure him. All blood will be used in the inheritance test itself. You have nothing to worry about. Although I understand your wariness in giving out your blood. One of my ancestors once gave his blood to a friend of my clan. He said it was for a ritual and it wouldn't cause my ancestor any problems. Let's just say that person didn't stay a friend of our clan for much longer. He also didn't remain living for much longer either. Aluk explains, causing Tom to become warier of his blood falling into enemy hands. I'm going to need an oath that what you just told me is true. Tom says, flat out refusing to continue until the oath is made. Hee, you really are like a goblin. If we find some goblin ancestry in your inheritance test, I may adopt you into my clan. Aluk chuckles and nods his head in approval. I swear on my magic that everything I've stated about the inheritance test is true. He states and wordlessly conjures a light at the top of his finger to prove that he still has his magic. Once Aluk proved to Tom that all of his blood would go towards the ritual, Tom took the blade in his right hand, held his left hand above the bowl, and cut his palm. Blood drips into the bowl and pools at the bottom. A moment later, the cut heals and Tom pushes the bowl towards Aluk. Before handing the knife over, he checks it to be sure there's no blood left clinging to it. There was none, so Tom handed the knife back as well. Aluk placed the knife to the side and conjured a piece of paper and a wooden board the size of a large cutting board. Carved into the wood is a bunch of runes and arrays that Tom knew nothing about. Aluk placed the paper on the far left side of the board and pours the blood into a small well on the opposite side. Once the bowl is completely empty and doesn't have a single drop of blood remaining, Aluk places the bowl to the side next to the knife. The blood flows from the well and through the carved arrays. As the blood passed through the arrays, the runes begin to shine. As the runes shine, the blood flows from the carved arrays and is sucked into the paper on the left of the board. Suddenly, red writing appears on the paper. Once the writing appeared, the runes dimmed and stopped shining. Aluk took the paper and read it over without much thought. His eyes widened and his cold goblin heart skipped a beat. He hit the jackpot the second this kid chose him in the lobby. Tom's accounts would make him and his clan a mountain of gold. Even if he only gets 4% of the income, it would be far more gold than his clan has seen in ages. Aluk's mouth started watering at the thought of so much gold entering his vault. Aluk brought his emotions under control as swiftly as he could and handed the paper to Tom. Tom couldn't see his face as the paper was blocking it, so he just thought Aluk was being thorough and reading everything on the page. Once he took the paper from Aluk, he saw something that he definitely didn't expect. Thomas Marvolo Riddle. Father, Thomas Riddle. Mother, Marapi Gaunt, deceased. Paternal grandfather, Tobias Riddle, deceased, Muggle. Paternal grandmother, Elizabeth Riddle, deceased, Muggle. Maternal grandfather, Marvolo Gaunt, deceased. Maternal grandmother, Lalani Gaunt, deceased. Maternal uncle, Morphin Gaunt. Godfather, none. Godmother, none. Heir Gaunt by blood and magic, maternal side. Heir Slytherin by blood and magic, maternal side. Heir Lo-Fey by blood and magic, paternal side. Heir Pendragon by blood and magic, paternal side. Businesses. 25% of Ollivanders. Other businesses listed have gone out of business long ago. Also, Gaunts are too poor to have any stakes in businesses. Vaults. Slytherin. Main vault 38,684,921 galleons. Dark artifact. Rare books. Treasures. Etc. Lo-Fey. Main vault 87,941,743 galleons. Dark artifact. Rare books. Treasures. Etc. Pendragon. Main vault 53,941,743 galleons. Random artifacts. Rare books. Treasures. Etc. Properties. Slytherin. Hogwarts Castle. Slytherin Manor. Etc. Lo-Fey. Lo-Fey Castle. Getaway Manor. Etc. Pendragon. Ministry of Magic Headquarters. Tintagel Castle. Etc. The list of Pendragon properties is very long. As soon as Tom started reading, his eyes widened the same as Aluk. This is far more than he thought would appear on this paper. There's no way that the Tom Riddle from the Harry Potter books and movies knew about this. Either he never went to get an inheritance test, or this world is slightly different from the books. The more likely answer is that this world is different. Tom may have to look into some things to see if they align with the books and movies. Hopefully, this is the only divergence from canon. Otherwise, Tom's future knowledge would go to waste. Wow, this is my lucky day, huh? Tom says as he places the paper down. Although, I don't understand a few things. What do you not understand? Aluk asks. Firstly, how am I heir Slytherin, yet grandfather and uncle aren't, or have they not come to get the inheritance test? Oh, they've been here all right. Every Gaunt comes to get an inheritance test as soon as they can. Aluk smiles wryly at his memories of the Gaunt family members flipping out when they learned that none of them were heirs to the most noble and ancient house of Slytherin. Then why am I the heir and they aren't? Tom asks. The answer is simply magic. All of the Gaunts were seen as unfit through magic to take up the mantle. Salazar set some filters in place to keep who he deemed unfit from taking his name and ruining his house. He was smart to do so, as every Gaunt I've met has been an insane nut job. Your uncle Morphin Gaunt, who's the head of House Gaunt, refuses to speak English and only talks in Parseltongue. Don't even get me started on your late grandfather. Aluk explains. Alright, but how the hell am I the heir to Lufey and Pendragon? Especially through the Muggle side of my family, and last but certainly not least, am I royalty now? Chapter 9, C9 Gringotts, 4, plus tests. A/N, want to read ahead of what I've posted so far? Go to my Patreon and get early access chapters. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. The second Aluk heard the question, am I royalty, he busted out in deep laughter. Seeing the goblin across from him laughing at his question, Tom's eyebrow twitched and he glares at Aluk. Once Aluk saw Tom glaring holes into him, he controlled his laughter and reined himself in. Well, you're technically a member of the Pendragon royal family, but the wizarding world has long moved past the times of monarchs. Although we are a backward world in many ways, we have a type of democratic system. Although it's not a full democracy, the leader of our country is an elected official. Could you still go by the title of royalty? Yes, but you would hold no power in the government as royalty. That doesn't mean you don't hold any power at all, as you are still nobility, but in the realm of a king or prince, you're quite powerless. Aluk clears his throat and explains. Thanks for explaining. Do you have books on our system of government that I can purchase? I need to start studying to get these things down. Tom asks, hoping that he can start learning these things quickly. No, do I look like I work at a bookstore? Aluk replies gruffly. *I**, can you write a list of books you know that I can purchase once our business is concluded? Tom asks in exasperation. For a price, yes. Aluk says greedily. Sure, just name the price. Tom replies without worry due to the oath of fairness they both took. 3 galleons. The goblin replies and a piece of paper appears in his hand. Here, you stingy goblin. Tom says jokingly as he slides 3 shiny gold pieces across the table. It's nice doing business with you. Aluk says and hands Tom the paper. Now, onto your question as to how you are the heir to Pendragon and Lufey from a Muggle family. He ponders for a moment before continuing. Pendragon and Lufey were half-siblings, so you are a descendant of one or both of them. Since they are related, you could be heir to both while only being descended from one. Quite lucky for you. As for them being Muggles, the Riddle family is most likely a Muggle family that is descended from a squib. That squib was a Pendragon, Lufey, or both. That's the likely explanation. Aluk says. That makes sense. Tom nods as he takes in Aluk's explanation. Now that that's out of the way. Aluk waves his hand and 4 boxes appear. These hold the heir rings and lord rings for Slytherin, Lufey, Pendragon, and Gaunt. Except the Gaunt's lord ring is currently in the possession of your uncle Morphin. You may only wear the heir ring, as the law states that you must graduate Hogwarts before taking up a lordship. The heir rings are yours to wear as we speak, but let me warn you now, the second you place the Gaunt ring on your finger, Morphin Gaunt will know of it. He will know who you are, and based on your status as a half-blood, he will not be happy. Will the Wisengamot be notified if I wear the rings? Tom asks, hoping the answer is no. Not unless you wish me to notify them. Aluk replies easily. No, I would rather stay low profile, for now, thanks. Tom denies Aluk immediately. I'll take the Slytherin, Lufey, and Pendragon rings. Leave the Gaunt one where it was for now. No need to bother old Uncle Morphin just yet. Tom says with a bloodthirsty smile. Aluk nods in approval and slides over the 3 boxes. The Gaunt box vanishes back to wherever it came from. Tom opens the boxes and sees 2 rings in each box. The rings in the first box are silver and green with the symbol of a coiled snake bearing its fangs. The only difference between the 2 rings is the thickness of the Lord ring. The Lord ring looks like a ring someone would receive if they won the World Series. While the heir ring is similar in shape, but it isn't nearly as large and pronounced. These must be the Slytherin rings. The next box has 2 rings as well. The shape of these rings is the same as the last box, but the overall theme is different. These are black and purple with a symbol of a waning moon. These must be the Lufey rings. The last box, once again, has 2 rings. The same shape as the last 2, but just as before the theme is different. They are gold and blue with a symbol of a sword in a stone. These rings are obviously the Pendragon rings. The Lord rings are a bit big and gaudy for my tastes. Tom thought as he gives the rings a once-over. I must give you another quick warning. Luck says as Tom was about to reach for a ring to wear. It said that the Lord ring of the most ancient and royal house of Pendragon would test the wearer. Although you aren't putting on the Lord ring just yet, the heir ring could try to test you in a more minor way. In fact, all of these rings will probably test you. They are from such notable and powerful people, after all. Hearing this, Tom nods and decides to save the Pendragon ring for last. First, he grabs the Slytherin heir ring and places it on his finger. As the ring slides onto his finger, Tom could hear someone speaking Parseltongue in his mind. Whoever they were said, "Reply now or die." Thinking that this may be the test for the Slytherin heir ring, Tom replies in Parseltongue as fast as he can. "Hello," Tom thinks I'm Snake Tongue. After he replies, the ring glows slightly and Tom could hear the voice again say, "You qualify." The ring then stops glowing and the voice disappears as if it was never there in the first place. Chapter 10, see 10 Gringotts, 5, plus tests as of this chapter. The Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. After passing the Slytherin heir rings test, it was time to try the next one. Tom pulls out the Lufay heir ring and places it on a different finger. The second the ring slides onto Tom's finger, a pulse of magic goes from the ring all the way up to his head. The magic seeps into Tom's mind and scans his memories. Memories of old Tom and his dastardly deeds play through Tom's mind. The ring hums in approval as the magic withdraws back to the ring. Was the qualification for the ring to accept me to be evil or something? Morgana must have been pretty messed up to set that as a requirement. Although, for once the old Tom isn't causing me problems. His actions actually helped me this time. Tom thought as he stares down at the last ring. Luck didn't know what the tests were, but he could tell that Tom was being tested. He could sense the magic activate every time Tom would place a ring on his finger. Now that it's down to the Pendragon ring, Luck watches on in great interest. Tom takes a deep breath and steadies himself as he reaches out and plucks the Pendragon heir ring from its box. He then places the ring on one of his non-occupied fingers. At first, nothing happens and Tom just waits. No magic, no voices, no nothing. The silence in the room becomes deafening as Tom just stares at the ring waiting for what felt like forever for something to happen. After a moment of waiting, Tom thinks maybe the Lord ring is the only one with the test. Suddenly, just as those words graced his thoughts, the ring glowed and Tom is no longer in the same room. He may not even be in Gringotts anymore. Tom looks around to see the most beautiful throne room he's ever seen. The throne room is huge with tall towering pillars holding up a domed ceiling. The left and right walls were adorned with beautiful stained glass windows. The throne is situated at the back of the room across the large doors with a red carpet leading up to it. Giant chandeliers hang on the ceiling illuminating the room perfectly. The throne itself is elevated 3 steps high on a stone platform. It's made of gold with gem and ruby inlays here and there. Sat at the throne is Tom Riddle. He stares around the room in wonder and confusion. Tom tries to stand from the throne, but no matter how much effort he puts into it, he can't seem to get off the throne. Suddenly, the doors to the throne room swing open, and in comes a man dressed as a peasant. He walks up to the throne and kneels reverently towards Tom. "Your Majesty, I come to you seeking justice for the woman I love. My neighbor, who is a jealous man, attacked her and our ** pet her while I was away at work. I spoke to the guards but they refused to act saying there's no proof. Meanwhile, my children saw the whole thing. I brought them as witnesses, but the guards still wouldn't hear of it. Please help me get justice for the wrong my family has had to go through, and especially for my wife." The peasant says as he starts to cry in the throne room. What the f***ck? Is this the test? Tom thought as he shrugged and decided to just go with the flow. "Are your wife and children here with you today?" The kingly Tom asks. "Yes, Your Majesty. I brought them knowing you'd want to speak with them," he replies. The doors open again and in comes 3 young boys and a woman of average beauty. One of the boys seems to be only a few years old while the other 2 look around 10 or 11. Their mother looks like she hasn't slept in a while and has a sad faraway look in her eyes. They come forward and kneel as their father did. Before they could speak, Tom had all of them leave the room. Who knows if these people are telling the truth or not, but it will be better to cross-reference their stories if they are told separately. The first to answer Tom's questions is the mother. She was extremely emotional throughout the whole thing, but her story was a lot more detailed than her husband's. Next was one of the elder boys, and his story seemed to match the mother's fairly well. After him was the other elder boy, and his story was a perfect match to the boy before him. That would make sense as they were together throughout the entire experience. Lastly, the youngest boy came in and walked to the throne alone. He didn't know what to do, so he bowed 3 times before kneeling. The boy's story also matched everyone else's. Although he was nervous, the boy did his best to include as much information as he could remember. Tom even leaned a bit hard into this kid to see if he would rat out his parents for lying, but no matter what Tom asked, the kid didn't waver from his story. In none of their stories could Tom find a single discrepancy. Seeing that the stories matched up, Tom called them all back into the throne room. "I've heard enough from all of you. Your neighbor will be arrested and his home searched. He will then be questioned as well as any friends and family we can find. You may return to your home," Tom says, and the family thanks him profusely before leaving the throne room. Then the doors opened again and a new person with a new problem arrived. Tom solved their problem as well, and the cycle continued. Over and over the doors would open with new people with problems only the king could solve. This lasted for what felt like forever as Tom would solve the problems of peasants and nobles alike. After an eternity of problem solving, Tom's perseverance paid off as a voice could be heard in his head. "You've performed adequately," the voice said, and Tom appeared in the meeting room with a luck once again. Chapter 11, see 11 Gringotts, 6. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. "How long was I gone?" Tom asks the second he returns. "Huh? What do you mean? You didn't go anywhere," Aluk says, giving Tom a confused look. Aluk could easily guess that Tom's behavior is linked to the test he took. When he placed the Pendragon heir ring on his finger, his eyes glazed over for a short time. After a few moments, Tom's eyes returned to normal and he asked Aluk a stupid question. "Never mind," Tom says as he stares into space for a moment. Aluk knew something happened but didn't push for any more information. If Tom wanted to tell Aluk what happened, he would have said something. Although the curiosity was gnawing at his soul, he decided to keep his mouth shut about it. "Would you like me to explain what you have access to in the bank now that you are the heir to 3 houses? Seeing as Tom didn't want to elaborate, Aluk moves on with his job. "Yes, that would be helpful." Tom stops staring into the air and listens closely for Aluk's explanation. "Well, as the heir to these houses, you have no access to the vaults until you take up your position as lord. Once again, you will be able to take up your lordship after graduating from Hogwarts or any other magical school for that matter. As for the businesses that you now own, you can't manage them until graduation, but you can appoint me to do so in your stead. All of the businesses, except Ollivander's wand shop, are out of business already. Although that doesn't mean that your vaults can't make any money, as you own a lot of land. The land in Diagon Alley and even the Wisengamot building. You could start charging them rent if you wish to do so. Also, I would like to start investing your money into other businesses that I've been watching carefully, and possibly buy some more land as well," he says with a greedy smile. He knows that the more money he makes Tom, the more wealthy he becomes in return. Of course, he wants to start building up Tom's accounts as soon as possible. He wouldn't be a goblin if he didn't. I'll let you manage my accounts, but don't start charging rent just yet. I don't need people looking into the owner of the land. Other than that, I fully support investing money into future businesses. I may send you a list of Muggle businesses that I want to invest in as well. I just have to do some research first," Tom says, knowing he has to stay low for a while. "Although I want to see their faces when their first rent bill arrives, I can hold myself back until you're ready to start coming into the light." Aluk nods as he's more than happy with just being able to start investing and buying land. 2 more things are left to explain. First, a trust vault is automatically open for orphaned heirs, so although you won't have access to the vaults, you will be receiving enough money to live fairly lavishly. Second, you have full access to all properties that are listed on the sheet. Aluk explains. Could you get me a list with the addresses of each property I own? Tom asks as the sheet only has the names with now locations. Yeah, I could also have some portkeys made for the properties that are too far for your house elf to apparate to. For a price, of course. He says, greedily. Yeah, sure, just tell me the price first. I'm not sure of the market value for portkeys. Tom asks. With the list of properties being so large, the amount that has to be made would cost around 700 galleons. Give or take a few sickles and nuts. He says after calculating the cost. All right, have the portkeys made and I'll pick them up another day. I'll pay for them when the work is done. Also, be sure to label each of them. Tom says as that's a cheap price for so many portkeys. That's easily done. Do you have anything else that needs to be done, or can we start setting up your trust vaults? Aluk asks. No, I was going to open a vault, but the trust vaults should cover that. Can we just make one vault that receives payments from all 3 houses? Tom asks, knowing that would be easier and simple. Aluk snaps his fingers and a large book appears before him. He schemes it for a moment and nods his head. There's nothing in the bank's rules that say you can't, so sure, why not? Aluk agrees easily. He then waves his hand and the book disappears, and in its place, a contract appears. This is just a standard contract to open up the vault. It says that the bank isn't liable for any dangerous or dark artifacts that you store in your vault. If any of these artifacts should damage the bank's property, the vault would be charged for said damage. Other than that, there will be no charges to keep the vault open, but there is a one-time fee of 100 galleons for opening it. The fee will be taken care of by your house's main vaults. Aluk explains and holds out the contract. Tom takes the paper and reads it over. Seeing that nothing is wrong with it, he signs in all the right places and hands it back. The contract also states that Tom will receive 1,000 galleons a month from each main vault until graduation. That's 3,000 galleons a month and the first deposit is already made. Not bad for someone that not long ago was a penniless orphan. Once Aluk takes the contract, he also signs it and makes a copy for Tom magically. An old-looking key appears in Aluk's hand, and he gives it to Tom. That is the key to your vault. Don't lose it, as the fee to replace it is a steep one. You know what? Lose it as much as you like. Aluk grins evilly. Greedy goblin. Tom mutters under his breath and checks the clock for the time. It's getting late. I should go home and get some sleep. Sure, but I need your address before you leave. I need to call you when the portkeys are done, and for other official business as well. Aluk asks and Tom gives him the address to Wool's orphanage. I already told him that I'm an orphan, so there's no use hiding it. Tom thought. After giving Aluk his address, Tom was permitted to leave the bank through an area that allows apparition. Better to stay out of the public eye as much as possible. The second he returned to the orphanage, Tom sent Mimsy to Diagon Alley in hopes to find a book on occlumency, Chapter 12, see 12 occlumency. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at Chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. When Mimsy left the orphanage, it was already late, so Tom wasn't very hopeful. With how late it had gotten, he wasn't sure that many stores would be open anymore. After waiting for a while, she returned with a pop holding a single book. Mimsy had to go to the bad evil alley to find this. The nice stores don't be sellin' books on brains, I guess. She says and holds out the book as if it were a treasure. Thanks, Mimsy. How much was it? Tom asks as he takes the book for her hands. 300 gallons. Mimsy says as she holds up 3 fingers. Tom could buy other books as well, but he wants to wait until he's searched his properties for any libraries. Also, his number 1 focus is on occlumency right now. He needs to get his mind on lockdown as soon as possible. The information he has is extremely valuable, and can't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. That could easily ruin Tom's future plans, while simultaneously putting a target on his back. He'll have time for book shopping later. Before going to bed, Tom read the first chapter of the book as quickly as possible. He didn't want to try anything yet, as practicing something without fully understanding it could cause problems. As he read, Mimsy brought him tea and some snacks to munch on. When he finished the chapter, he went straight to bed in order to get as much sleep as possible. The second his body sank into the sheets, the weight of everything that happened today hit him and he fell asleep instantly. The next morning, Mimsy woke him up an hour before sunrise. Tom asked her to, as he needs to optimize his time as much as possible. The second he woke up, Tom went straight to the book again, hoping to finish it as quickly as possible. When the sun rose and the day began, Tom had speed read his way through every chapter of the book. He learned everything and remembered it fairly well. Occlumency is the protection of the mind from legilimency, which is essentially mind reading, but it's also so much more. You have to first meditate to find your mindscape, and then start to build the defenses. The sky is the limit when it comes to what you can make to defend your mind. Whether the defenses are strong depends completely on the user's imagination. Since Tom finished the book earlier than expected, he started meditating as explained in the book. It explained a form of meditation called Mind Palace Meditation. With a few breathing exercises, the right positioning, and some tips and tricks, Tom is supposed to find his inner world. Once he started meditating, Tom got lost in it and blocked out everything else. Time passed around him and Tom didn't even realize it. Suddenly, the matron walks into the room, as Tom didn't show up to breakfast. Mimsy was already hiding out of sight as to not spook the muggle. The matron thought that he may not be feeling well, so she came to check on him and bring his food straight to his room. When she saw Tom sitting on the bed unmoving, legs crossed, and eyes closed, she didn't understand what he was doing. Could this be brought on by some sort of brain damage? She thought, as she has no idea why he would just sit there like that. "Thomas, are you awake?" she asks, and Tom breaks from his trance, returning to the world around him. "Yes, I was just trying to calm my mind. I must have fallen asleep," Tom says, making the best excuse that he can think of. "I brought your breakfast, as you didn't show up," she says, and hands a tray of unappetizing food to him. "Are you feeling well?" "I'm feeling better than yesterday, but my head is a bit sore and I'm kind of tired." Tom lies to get more time in his room. If he suddenly feels perfectly fine, he will be expected to leave his room for mealtimes and other events. Right now Tom's in a perfect position to meditate. He can spend all of his time meditating, as it will be seen as an injured person resting to heal. Tom plans to milk his non-existent injuries more than any soccer player ever has. After a short conversation, the matron leaves Tom to rest and recuperate. Tom looks at the disgusting slop that was brought to him and sneers. The food somehow had the effect of scaring away his hunger. There's no way he's eating the CR*P anymore, not when he has Mimsy to get him some edible food. No, not just edible, but delicious food. He then sends Mimsy to a nearby restaurant to steal him some food. The food the matron brought was swiftly zapped into nothingness by elf magic. Once Tom filled his stomach, he went straight back to meditation. No time can be wasted when Dumbledore will arrive within the week. Tom spends the rest of the day meditating, but he doesn't find his inner world. He feels as if he were close, but he's no expert on the matter. The next day was also spent meditating. The matron would come to check on him and Tom would keep playing up his injury. Right when he was about to give up for the day and call it a night, Tom's consciousness appeared in an open plain of grass. The blue sky above him has clouds scattered here and there. What caught his eye immediately was the floating orbs everywhere. They were hovering in random positions all around him. This must be my inner world, Tom thought as he looks around in wonder. Based on what the book said, the first step is to collect and organize the memories. Tom could tell that the orbs are his memories, so he knows what has to be collected. The question is, how should he go about collecting them? He could just walk around and pluck every memory out of the air one by one, but that would take far too much time for his time frame. The book said that the only limit is your imagination, so what if he were to imagine something to help him speed things up? An idea forms in Tom's mind and he imagines a tool that will assist greatly in collecting his memories. Suddenly, a red vacuum backpack appears on Tom's back. This is the Poltergeist 5000 from Luigi's Mansion, except it's been modified to collect memories instead of ghosts. Tom admires his handiwork for a moment and turns on the vacuum. Let's get this done quickly so I can move on to the next step, Tom thought as he gets to work. Chapter 13, C13 Vacuuming and Sorting Memories. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at Chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. In a beautiful grassy plain, an 11-year-old boy with black hair and bright red eyes could be seen wielding a vacuum cleaner. He has the hose aimed upwards as it sucks in the floating orbs that can be seen scattered everywhere. He's been absorbing memories for about an hour now, and it's about time to sleep. Almost a quarter of his memories have been absorbed already. Tom turns off the Poltergeist 5000 and checks out his handy work. What is said in the book to take months will definitely be finished by tomorrow. With a bit of imagination, the collection of memories has been quite easy. As Tom was wondering how to leave his inner world, he awakens from his meditation in his room at the orphanage. I guess that I just had to think of leaving and I can leave my inner world. Tom thought as he starts to feel mentally exhausted. The book said that this could happen depending on how much you get done in the inner world. Tom just cleaned up a very large amount of his memories within the shorty span of an hour. That would tire anyone's mental capacity, let alone Tom, who's only 11 years old. Tom didn't even try to stay up and sinks into bed to get a good night's sleep. The next morning, Mimsy woke up Tom at 3 a.m. as usual, but Tom's body demanded more rest after last night's tiring mental work. Tom ended up listening to his body and going back to sleep until the sun peeked into the room and woke him yet again. This time he felt a lot more refreshed and ready for the day. He was still a bit mentally tired, but he can't waste any more time. Tom had a bit of time before the matron would usually come to check on him and bring up his slop. He spent that time in the inner world using the Poltergeist 5000 to suck up another 25% of his memories. Only half remained to be collected now. After an hour of work inside the inner world, Tom left as he could hear the matron calling him. As he opens his eyes, he feels that mental exhaustion again. The matron is by his bedside and hands him his breakfast. She has already grown used to Tom's weird ritual of what he calls clearing his mind. After asking about his health, the matron leaves to tend to the other children. Tom feels far too tired to go in and do anything in his inner world, so he takes a break and eats a delicious breakfast that Mimsy stole for him. The disgusting slop that the matron brought was taken care of by Mimsy's elf magic. Once Tom finished eating, he decided to take a small nap. This way he will have some energy to go back into the inner world and get to work again. Tom didn't wake up until late into the evening. The matron came to bring him his lunch but saw him sleeping peacefully and left him alone. The matron brought him dinner and left him to his own devices as usual. Tom then swore to himself that he would push himself to finish collecting the orbs before bed. This way it would be finished and he could sleep in tomorrow because he'll definitely be worn out after this. He goes in and spends the next 2 hours just sucking up orbs. Once he finished, he knew he would probably pass out the second he left the inner world. Before leaving, he looked around at the open plain that is no longer clouded in memory orbs. He felt like he just cleaned his house and it's finally finished. Everything is cleaned and nice. It's truly a good feeling. The second he left the inner world, he didn't have much time to think, as he fell back and passed out into a deep sleep. Mimsy was already instructed to let him sleep until sunrise again. When that time came, Tom didn't wake up on his own. Mimsy had to wake him up, and he awoke with a huge headache. The throbbing in his head was extremely annoying and painful. Mimsy popped away and picked up a pain relief potion she bought from the apothecary in Diagon Alley. The potion worked like a miracle and Tom's pain vanished almost instantly. I love magic, Tom thought as he goes through his usual morning ritual. After dealing with the matron and eating breakfast, Tom goes straight back into the inner world. He now has a vacuum filled with memory orbs that need to be organized. This isn't a step in the book, but it's a step that Tom decided to take. In many fan fictions he's read, the main character organized their minds and they gained total recall. The ability to remember nearly every event of their lives in extreme detail. Tom wanted to test this and see if it worked. Even if it doesn't work, organized memories can't possibly be a bad thing. Tom takes a minute to come up with a game plan and finally decided on how he will organize his mind. He imagines a top-of-the-line laptop from 2020 and a USB cable that can go from the Poltergeist 5000 to the laptop. He then plugs the vacuum into the computer and hopes his plan works. Pressing the power button in the computer, it boots up and Tom logs on and creates a password to log on. Once he's logged into the laptop, he finds the Poltergeist 5000 in the devices section and double-clicks it. A folder filled with names of his memories along with dates and the amount of space they occupy appears. Tom creates a folder on the laptop called My Memories and moves everything from the vacuum to that folder. He made sure to cut and paste so nothing is left on the vacuum itself. After moving the files, he wills the vacuum out of existence and it disappears. He then sorts the memory folder by date and boom, he's done. Perfectly organized memories finished in a single trip to the inner world. Tom didn't feel any different at the moment. No perfect memory, eidetic memory, or anything like that. Tom decided to see if anything would change once he's outside the inner world, so he willed himself out and woke up from his meditation. The second he opened his eyes, Tom's eyes rolled back and he fainted instantly. Creators THOUGHTS Chapter 14, C14 Perfect Recall and Time Skip. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at Chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Seeing her master wake up and swiftly faint, Mimsy didn't know what to do. On one hand, she wanted to take her master to St. Mungo's hospital, but on the other hand, she knows her master wants to stay hidden. That night Mimsy decided against her better judgment to leave her master alone and hope he would wake up soon. Although, she did take the time to tuck Tom into bed and make sure he was comfortable. When the matron came to check on him that night, she saw that he was asleep and attributed it to his recovery. She left him alone that night and swore to bring some extra food tomorrow morning. He missed lunch and dinner, after all. Tom didn't awaken until the next morning. He woke up to the matron shaking his shoulder lightly and asking him to wake up. She was slightly worried that Tom had possibly gone into a coma. As Tom's eyes opened, a sigh of relief escaped her lips. She may be wary of the boy, but she doesn't wish harm on him. The second Tom returned to the conscious world, he had a huge headache. This one made the last one feel like nothing at all. He wanted to scream and cover his ears, as the matron's voice was like nails on a chalkboard to his sensitive mind. Tom wanted to test to see if he had perfect recall, but the pin was all he could think about. His best shot to end the pain is to get the matron to leave and send Mimsy to purchase another pain relief potion. Tom gathered all of the willpower he has and bared the pain as he talked the matron into leaving him alone. The problem was she kept asking questions about his health. After placating her worry and getting her the hell out of the room, Tom immediately Allen for Mimsy. Mimsy. Pain relief potion, now. Tom says and Mimsy appears by his side with a potion already in hand. Tom snatches the potion from her hands and downs the whole vial in seconds. When the pain vanished, he sank into his bed for a moment and enjoyed the feeling of his head no longer throbbing. Is Master okay now? Mimsy asks with a worried expression. Yes, how did you get the potion so fast? Tom asks. I bought a bunch in case Master had pains again. Mimsy says with confidence swelling in her chest. Well, good thinking. Thanks for thinking ahead like that. Tom says and pats her bald head. Mimsy swells with happiness at her master's acknowledgement. She can't seem to understand how her parent bad masters couldn't be like hers. She wouldn't have to worry about them so much if that's how they were. Now that Tom isn't feeling a pain worse than death in his mind, he tries to think of his memories and can remember everything. He can remember his first birthday as Gregory. He could remember everything from that day. The smell in the air, how he was feeling, what he ate, the temperature. He could remember every second of that whole day. Not just that day either. Every second of every day as both old Tom, Gregory, and new Tom. He remembers it all. Hee, it worked. Tom said out loud with an excited smile. Time skip. Today is the day that Dumbledore should arrive. In preparation for his arrival, Tom has built up as many defenses in his mind as he possibly could. He wanted to build a castle at first, but that would take far too much time. Small things like the Poltergeist 5000 can be willed into existence fairly easily, but a whole castle would take far too much time. Time that Tom didn't have, as Dumbledore was to arrive within the week. That certainly doesn't mean that the defenses Tom built weren't strong, if not stronger than a castle. He just wanted the castle because he thought it would be cool to have. Tom's first line of defense is a giant force field type shield. He got the idea from the shield used to protect Wakanda in the MCU movies. It covers his entire inner world, which isn't that big in the first place. The shield should at least keep out some passive legitimacy probes. The next thing Tom did to protect his mind is build an underground bunker. In order to enter the bunker, You have to enter a 32-digit code on the keypad. The door to get in is 8 feet thick and is made with the same properties as adamantium. The bunker isn't big, as Tom didn't have time to go too crazy. Inside the bunker is a small square room with a desk and chair. The desk has a computer with a crazy long passcode that Tom doesn't even remember. This whole bunker is a decoy for anyone that enters looking for information. It's trapped as well, so if any unwanted guests break in, they will be trapped forever in Tom's mind. The real hiding place for Tom's laptop full of his memories is a hollowed-out tree disguised as any other. Even if someone knew to look inside a tree to find it, there's a small forest of them. It would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Also, Tom has the computer hooked up to a sort of imaginary Wi-Fi. If anyone were to type in the wrong password or try to take it out of Tom's mind, the information would be uploaded to another laptop hidden 10 feet under a patch of grass and deleted from the stolen one. This is all Tom could get done before the fateful day that Dumbledore would arrive. Now Tom is sitting in his room patiently awaiting the old meddler's arrival. Today is the day that Tom would get the slightest clue as to whether this Dumbledore is good or bad. Many stories that he's read as Gregory would portray him as an evil man that acted as a kind grandfather. Tom would like to believe that this was just the author making an enemy other than Voldemort for the main characters to face off against, but they could have been correct for all he knew. It's best to expect the unexpected and hope that he isn't some evil overlord. Also, it doesn't matter whether Dumbledore is good or evil, as they will most likely be enemies anyway. The second Dumbledore speaks with anyone in the orphanage about Tom, he will no doubt be wary of him from that moment on. That wariness will grow as Tom will most likely be sorted into Slytherin. He is the heir to Slytherin, after all. He should be sorted into his ancestor's house. While he was pondering these things, a knock could be heard at the door. The matron walks in a moment later with a crooked-nosed, bearded, elderly man trailing behind her. This is obviously Dumbledore. He doesn't look as old as he did in the movies and he even has a little of his auburn brown hair still. He's dressed in grey robes that any other wizard would wear. I expected him to wear outlandish robes like the stories I've read portray him to wear. Dumbledore examines Tom with vigilance. Although on the outside he simply smiles in a grandfatherly manner, on the inside he's worried about enrolling this boy into Hogwarts. Just based on the handful of children he has spoken to since his arrival, his impression of Tom Riddle is anything but good. Even the matron expressed her wariness of the boy. Dumbledore did not like what he heard one bit. The second he entered the room, he sent a passive legitimacy probe towards Tom as their eyes met. He needed to see if what the children said was true or not. To his immense surprise, the probe failed. No, it was blocked. The shock and suspicion that graced his face was not missed by Tom, nor was the attack on his inner world. He felt the probe bounce off his shields and smiled inwardly at his handiwork. Creators THOUGHTS Chapter 15, C15 Fateful Meeting. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 2 chapters ahead at Chapter 17. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Tom, this is Professor Dumbledore. He's here to speak with you about the school he works for. The matron introduces Dumbledore with a smile on her face. The matron would be more than happy to send Tom to this man's school, as he would be away for the majority of the year. She wouldn't have to worry about the other children's safety as much with Tom in a boarding school. Tom pretends not to notice Dumbledore's probe and smiles towards the matron. Oh, does it have anything to do with the letter I received? Tom asks curiously. You received a letter? I don't remember you getting one. The matron looks confused, but simply shrugs it off. Maybe I forgot, she thought. Would you mind giving us some time alone? I wish to speak with the young Thomas about what the school offers. Among other things as well. Dumbledore asks and the matron looks to Tom to see what he wants. Would you like me to stay? She asks out of courtesy. No, I think I'll be all right. I'll call if I need you for anything. Tom says and the matron leaves the room to attend to the other children. The room falls into an awkward silence as Dumbledore sits on a spare wooden chair. He looks at Tom for a moment before speaking, but as he was about to open his mouth, Tom spoke first. So, are you a wizard? Tom asks, pretending to not already know everything. Why would you think that? Dumbledore asks with a fake grandfatherly smile. You have a long beard. You're wearing robes. You have a big nose. Witches have big noses, don't they? Oh, and the letter said it was from a place called Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. If you're here on behalf of the school, then you're most likely a wizard. Either that or you're some oddly dressed pedophile that tricked the matron into getting into a young boy's bedroom. Tom says innocently but smiled inwardly at the shocked and appalled face Dumbledore made at his last words. I can assure you that I'm a wizard. The letter should have informed you of my arrival. I'm here to answer any of your questions, and take you to purchase supplies for the school year. Dumbledore says, trying to ignore and brush past the pedophile comment. Oh, that's good. I can't wait to start learning magic. Hey, the letter says first years can't have brooms. Why would we need brooms? Are we supposed to clean with them or something? Tom asks. No, in the magical world, flying on brooms is a way of transportation. They are mainly used in a game called Quidditch. You'll learn about it when the season starts at school. Dumbledore explains. After a long session of Tom asking Dumbledore a lot of dumb questions to annoy him, Tom agrees to attend Hogwarts but first asks a majorly important question. He asked Dumbledore to show him a magic trick, as Tom called it. Dumbledore looked visibly offended that Tom would call real magic spells magic tricks. Being compared to an average Muggle magician didn't sit well with Dumbledore, but he still showed him a bit of magic anyway. It is his job to explain the wizarding world to Tom, and showing a bit of magic is a part of that explanation. He pulled out his wand and cast a simple Lumos, which is a spell that produces light, and a bright light appeared above his wand. Speaking of Dumbledore's wand, it's a simple wand. Nothing to write home about. Although, Tom knows that he is supposed to get the strongest wand in the world when he defeats Grindelwald. Maybe, I should find a way to get the wand instead. It would be such a waste to allow such a fine magical focus to fall into a lesser wizard's hands. Although, at the moment, I'm the lesser in this scenario. I'll have to get powerful enough for when Dumbledore and Grindelwald duel. Tom schemed inside his head as he conversed with Dumbledore. Another fairly important question popped into Tom's head, so he voices it to Dumbledore. I have to buy the supplies, right? Dumbledore nods to Tom's question. You do know that I'm an orphan, right? I have no money. Also, does attend school cost anything as well? Tom asks, pretending not to be the richest man in the magical world. Well, maybe the second most rich person. Nicholas Flamel has a stone that can turn any metal into gold. Tom can't compete with that just yet. Dumbledore then went in to explain that orphans get free schooling and supplies. Everything would be charged to the school, so Tom has nothing to worry about. After answering all of Tom's questions, Dumbledore escorted him to the Leaky Cauldron. Of course, they informed the matron on their way out. Tom got to ride the infamous night bus, which was more of a roller coaster than a bus ride. When they arrived at the Leaky Cauldron, Tom was escorted through the pub and into the back where the entrance to Diagon Alley resided. Dumbledore tapped the brick wall 5 times, in 5 different places. The wall opened magically and the busy street of Diagon Alley appears before us. Witches and wizards were bustling through the alley from store to store. Tom stares at the view with a bit of fake wonder. Not that the place wasn't marvelous, but he's already seen the alley when he went to Gringotts. Northwest one on the street pays much mind to them as Dumbledore leads Tom through the packed crowd. Dumbledore isn't famous at the moment, as he'll gain most of his fame through defeating Grindelwald. The Second World War hasn't even started yet, so Tom doesn't have to deal with a politically strong Dumbledore, which is why he was so happy he wasn't born as Harry Potter. Having a powerful enemy is one thing, but having an enemy that has tons of followers that hang off of his every word is a completely different story. Alright, the first stop is to get you some proper wizard's robes. Dumbledore says and leads Tom to a shop titled Madame Malkin's Robes for All Occasions, Chapter 16, C16 Wand. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 3 chapters ahead at Chapter 19. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones. That is if I can get Power Stones. Quiet isn't accepting them. Hopefully today I can get them. Also, I don't think I'm going to do a harem this time. It just seems easier that way and I'm kinda bored of harems. Give me your picks for who Tom should be paired with. Although depending on who is chosen, the romance may not start until later in the story. Enjoy the chapter. Dumbledore escorted Tom to each and every store to get his school supplies. He bought his books, clothes, cauldron, etc. The only thing that Tom couldn't get was a pet. The school didn't cover pets as they weren't essential. He couldn't even get an owl to deliver mail, as he could just use the school's owls if needed. Tom swore to himself that he would come back after Dumbledore left and browse the pet shops. Isn't Nagini still in human form by this point? Maybe I should find her and recruit her before she gets stuck as a snake. I may be able to come up with a cure for her blood curse sooner or later. Tom thought as he remembered the original Voldemort's pet snake. After getting all of his supplies, the only place left to go is Ollivander's wand shop. Dumbledore, being the nosy man that he is, followed Tom straight into the shop to see what type of wand he would receive. The inside of the shop was a bit dim and behind the desk was lined with bookshelves. Each shelf is packed with boxes that house wands made by different members of the Ollivander family line. As they walked inside, Dumbledore hung back by the door as he knows of Garrick Ollivander's odd need to prank his first-time customers. Tom walked in and made his way to the desk. He knew that Ollivander would try to scare him, or at least he thought so based on what he's read. As he made it to the desk, no one had appeared and the shop seemed empty. A silver bell sat on the desk for customers to call for service, so Tom tapped the bell a few times. A moment after hitting the bell, Garrick Ollivander popped out from behind the desk. He seemed to be in his 40s or 50s with wide, pale eyes that almost shined through the darkly lit shop. Was he just sitting down there? Tom thought as he stared at the odd wand maker before him. Garrick tisked at the fact that he got no reaction at all from his prey, but let it go and went into business mode. Maybe the desk isn't the best of hiding spots, Garrick thought. Welcome to Ollivander's wand shop. I'm Garrick Ollivander, and who might you be? Garrick asks as he ignores Dumbledore completely. Thomas Riddle. Tom says flatly and decides to get to the point. So, how does this whole thing work? Do you find a wand that's pre-made to match me, or can I order a wand to be made especially for me? Tom asks with a quirk of his eyebrow, but before Garrick could open his mouth, Dumbledore speaks up. He will be getting a pre-made wand. His wand is being paid for by the school, and the Hogwarts doesn't cover custom wands. Dumbledore says, and Garrick nods. Although you can't purchase a custom-made wand today, you may come again at any time to place an order. That is if you have the spare capital to afford it. Custom wands aren't cheap, after all. Now, which is your wand arm? Garrick asks as he gestures to Tom's hands. I'm ambidextrous if that's what you're asking. Tom replies as he moves both of his hands. It's true. After getting perfect recall, Tom found that he could use both hands to write and draw perfectly. It's a skill that should come in handy during wizarding duels, as he could switch wand hands on the fly. I see. Garrick nods and starts studying and measuring Tom's hands. After taking Tom's measurements and memorizing every line in his hands, Garrick starts unloading wands in Tom one after the other. Some cause destruction the second he picks them up, and others just simply do nothing at all. A few of the Tom felt a small connection to, but nothing strong enough to warrant buying it. With every failed match, Garrick's smile widened to the extreme. He loved the difficult customers the most. With the vigor of someone half of his age, Garrick poured through his stock of wands with mad glee. That's it. That was my last wand. You are my favorite customer, you know that. Not once in all of my family has a customer ever gone through so many wands without a match. You sure know how to please a wand maker, Tom. Garrick states of boxes and wands lay strewn about the room. Every shelf on the whole shop was empty, as they went through every one. While they were going through the wands, Tom got to hold the wand that the original Voldemort bought. It was one of the few that he felt a slight connection to. He guessed that since he was no longer the old Tom, that wand wouldn't be a perfect match anymore. So, what does this mean? Do I get a custom wand or something? Tom asks. Yes, we'll have to do that. Garrick says and sees Dumbledore about to speak up. Don't worry, the price will be the same as a pre-made wand. This is the trickiest customer in the history of my family's shop, after all. Garrick says with a crazy smile plastered on his face. I'm honored to hold such a prestigious position. Tom says and Garrick nods as if it really were such an honor. Follow me. Garrick said and they started to follow him. Not you. He says towards Dumbledore, who was following along behind Tom. Custom wands are more a private thing. You can wait up here if you like. Dumbledore looks slightly annoyed at being barred from the process but agrees because this isn't his shop. He has to follow the rules like anybody else. Tom smirks at being able to ditch Dumbledore for a while. Every second spent with him felt like Tom was being studied and he didn't like it. Garrick escorted Tom to a door that leads to a basement. The basement was even darker than the already fairly dim shop above it. The walls of the basement are lined with shelves filled with wand-making ingredients. The center of the basement has workbenches and various other tools that are presumably used in wand crafting. I'm going to gather some wood and we'll start with that. Garrick says as he flicks his wand and many pieces of wood fly to an open table. Place your hand on every love of wood and tell me which one you feel most connected to. Tom nods and does as he's told. He walks to the table and places his hand on every piece. He felt a minor connection to a couple of them, but none of them felt as perfect as the one he now holds in his hand. It's a bone-white block of wood that's grasped tightly in Tom's hand. It was the last wood he grabbed and the second he touched it, he felt as if it belonged to him. Ah, I see. Garrick nods as he can already tell that that's the wood Tom is most compatible with. That is yew wood. Yew wands are among the rarer kinds, and their ideal matches are likewise unusual and occasionally notorious. The wand of yew is reputed to endow its possessor with the power of life and death, which might, of course, be said of all wands, yet yew retains a particularly dark and fearsome reputation in the spheres of dueling and curses. However, it is untrue to say that those who use yew wands are more likely to be attracted to the dark arts than another. The witch or wizard best suited to a yew wand might equally prove a fierce protector of others. Wands cut from these most long-lived trees have been found in the possession of heroes quite as often as of villains. Where wizards have been buried with wands of yew, the wand generally sprouts into a tree guarding the dead owner's grave. What is certain, in my experience, is that the yew wand never chooses either a mediocre or a timid owner, Garrick explains, and Tom nods as he knows that he isn't mediocre or timid. Tom looks at the piece of yew in his hands and couldn't help but nod. The wood matches him perfectly. He's the descendant of a hero, King Arthur Pendragon, and 2 dark arts masters. Well, Morgana would have been a mistress. They were definitely notorious and he would someday be as well. All right, what's next? Tom asks as he hands the wood over to Garrick. Next we find what core would best fit your wand. He says and waves his wand yet again. The leftover woods fly back to their original shelves and different types of wand cores take their place. Tom already knows the drill and doesn't have to be told what to do. He walks forward and places his hand on every single one of them. The problem with the cores is that Tom felt a strong connection to more than one of them. One is a bunch of white hairs, and the other is a small finger bone wrapped in black cloth. When Garrick saw Tom react to 2 different cores, he wasn't too surprised as dual-core wands aren't that rare in custom wands. Although what shocked him is the cores themselves. You are truly an odd child, aren't you? Garrick says as he eyes the cores that Tom brought back to him. Why is that? Tom asks as he raises his eyebrow. First you have a connection with you, which is already fairly rare, but now you bring me 2 cores that are the exact opposite of each other. He says as he motions for Tom to hand them over. This is a bunch of unicorn tail hairs. He says as he snatches the hairs. While this is the finger bone of a dementor that one of my oldest ancestors gave his very soul to retrieve. He snatched the bone and looks at the 2 with wonder in his wide eyes. Somehow, your perfect wand is a mix of the purest of light creature, the unicorn, and the darkest and vile creature, the dementor. Pretty horned pony and soul-sucking monster. Do you not see how odd that is? Chapter 17, C17 Wand, 2, plus shopping alone. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 4 chapters ahead at chapter 21. I'll probably be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. I can finally get power stones. Bonsai. Bonsai. Skyrocket me up the leaderboard, boys. Enjoy the chapter. After explaining to Garrick that he has no idea why he would react to such an odd pairing of cores, Tom was told that the wand would be finished within a couple of hours. Dumbledore had some sort of meeting at the school, so Garrick promised to escort him to the night bus once they were finished. He was extremely reluctant to leave Tom alone, but he had to get to the school. He was already late for a staff meeting and couldn't waste any more time. After explaining to Tom about the train to Hogwarts and how to get onto Platform 9 March 4th, Dumbledore gave him his ticket and left the shop in a hurry. Tom didn't know if Garrick would rat him out or not, so he stayed in the wand shop the entire time. He wanted to explore the different shops, but that could wait for another time. After almost 3 hours of waiting for Garrick to finish his wand, he came up from the basement with a black box in hand. He seemed very proud of himself as he held the box out for Tom to take. Garrick reminded Tom of a child that drew a picture they were proud of and wanted their parents to put it on the fridge. When Tom opened the box, Garrick smiled with pride at one of his most challenging and beautiful creations. The wand is bone white with a bone-shaped handle. Once the handle ends, the wand gets much thinner. The lower half of the wand after the handle has some odd holes here and there. The wand looks like someone carved a wand out of a human bone. A/N, same wand as the cover photo. If that's not clear enough, just Google Voldemort's wand. This is truly one of my finest creations. 13.5 inches long, made out of you with unicorn hair and Dementor bone dual core. It may very well be the most powerful wand I've ever created. Garrick says with the utmost pride in his work. Hearing this, Tom is truly happy. It may not be the Elder Wand, but it sure as hell is better than most wands out there. Better yet, he didn't even have to spend a dime for it. Sometimes being an orphan has its perks. After admiring his new wand for a few moments, Tom takes it in his hand and something amazing happens. Power of which the likes Tom has never felt courses through his body, as the tip of the wand lights up and 2 transparent beings appear as if conjured by the wand. One is a bright white unicorn, and the other is a dark black Dementor. They appear before Tom for a few moments before returning to the wand. This truly is my finest masterpiece. Garrick mutters as the creatures disappear. What just happened? Tom asks as he stares at his wand curiously. You gained acceptance from both of the creatures whose parts make up your dual core. That isn't extremely rare, but to have 2 opposites accept you at the same time is truly astonishing. Not to mention that one of them is a Dementor. Garrick just stared at Tom for a moment before opening his mouth. You, Thomas Riddle, will go on to do great things. I don't know whether those things will be terrible or wonderful, but they will be truly great. He says as he eyes Tom as if trying to figure out his every secret. After Garrick's prophecy of Tom's greatness, he escorted him to the street outside the Leaky Cauldron and called the night bus. Tom rode back to the orphanage alone as he pondered over the next step he should take. He needs to start studying and familiarizing himself with the culture of the wizarding world. Especially since he'll most likely be sorted into Slytherin. He can't go around acting like a muggle whilst surrounded by a house of purebloods. When he arrived at the orphanage, Tom carried a trunk filled with his Hogwarts supplies to his room. The kids in the orphanage give him a wide berth, as they want nothing to do with Tom. When he arrives at his room, he closes the door and calls for his trusty house elf. Mimsy. Tom yells as he doesn't have to worry because the room is soundproofed. Master be needin' anythin'? Mimsy asks as she appears with a pop. Yes, we are going back to Diagon Alley. I got all the things on my list, but now I wish to go shopping for myself. Also, I have received a letter from Aluck yet, so we can go and check on the status of my portkeys. Tom says as he places his trunk down at the foot of his bed. Okay, does Master want to be goin' now? She asks. Yeah, the matron should be cooking dinner right now, so we have maybe an hour before she comes looking for us. Tom says as he grabs a hold of Mimsy and they pop away. They appear at an exclusive apparition entrance to Gringotts Bank. Aluck managed to get Tom registered to use it since he wishes to keep his identity a secret. Of course, Tom has his mask on just to be safe. After speaking with Aluck, Tom left the bank with a bottomless bag filled to the brim with portkeys. Each one of them labeled for different properties that Mimsy's apparition just couldn't reach. Tom also pulled out some money for his shopping spree from his trust vault. Tom then spent the day, browsing the shops and buying anything that caught his eye. When it came to books, he made sure to not buy any really old ones, as he most likely already owns them. He just has to sort through the many properties he owns and find them. The problem with that is that he owns so many properties that it would be a waste of time for him to do the work himself. Tom does have Mimsy to do the work, but she's only one elf. I need to start recruiting more elves to get some work done. Tom thought and decided to try calling for some later. If that doesn't work, he'll write to Aluck and see where he can purchase some elves. He also bought every book on the list that Aluck gave him during their first meeting. These are books on the laws and everything to do with the government. He needed to know these things as no one would teach him, and he has noble houses to represent. Tom also bought some books on etiquette for noble wizards and random things that would come in handy for his future plans. Other than books, Tom also visited a few pet shops. One of them being Aesop's Owl Emporium, where he bought a Eurasian eagle owl, as he thought it looked interesting. Tom didn't want to use the school's owls, as he didn't know whether anyone would read his mail. With his own owl, at least he'll know that it won't listen to anyone but him. Other than that, Tom didn't buy anything else. He did go to a few other pet stores and see some snakes that were bad-mouthing their keepers, but Tom already had 2 snakes in mind that he wanted. Nagini and the basilisk in Hogwarts. There's no need to purchase some lesser reptiles when Tom could have the top of the food chain for free. As for Nagini, he would have to see if she interests him once he meets her. Tom also bought himself a better trunk, as the one the school bought for him is annoying to lug around. The new one has a weight reduction feature as well as a shrinking feature. Once shrunk down to the smallest size, the trunk can be worn like a charm on a bracelet. That will definitely be more convenient than dragging around a big and heavy trunk. By the time Tom bought the trunk, it was about time to head back to the orphanage. The matron should be finished with dinner by now. Chapter 18, see 18 times skip. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 5 chapters ahead at chapter 23. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. Time skip September 1st, 1938. Today is the day that Tom will be headed to King's Cross Station to take the train to Hogwarts. He spent the month of free time doing many things, but he mainly spent his time studying. The second he arrived home from his shopping spree, Tom tried to call for more elves like Mimsy, but no other elves answered his call. Seeing that his trick to get elves isn't working anymore, Tom wrote a letter to Luck asking how to go about purchasing more elves. He received a letter the next day stating that the Gringotts sells house elves. It also had some addresses to other elf dealers, as Luck called them, but emphasized the high quality of Gringotts elves. Since his business dealings with Luck are backed by an oath of fairness, Tom decided to buy the elves through him. Elves aren't that expensive either at just 100 galleons an elf. Tom put in an order for 20 house elves. He had Mimsy drop off the 2,000 galleons, and she returned with 20 healthy-looking elves. Tom wasted no time and became their master as fast as possible. Once they were sworn servants, Tom told them the same ground rules as Mimsy and put her in charge. Hearing her master make her the head elf, Mimsy's chest swelled with pride. She is her master's first elf and he trusts her the most. She wanted to cry tears of happiness but didn't want to look bad in front of the new elves. She would save these tears for later when she's alone and her reputation among her new subordinates wasn't on the line. After laying down the law, Tom had an important mission for his elves. He sent them to every one of his properties to organize and catalog any books, artifacts, and other important items. He needed to know what he had and what he needed. This would probably take some time, even with the help of magic. Tom owned a lot of properties, after all. He also wanted them to clean up the properties as well, but that could wait for another time. While the elves were working on his properties, Tom pondered on whether to use his wand or not. He knew that the Wizengamot puts a trace in every wand, but he wasn't sure when that trace is placed. In the Harry Potter movies, Hermione bragged about practicing magic at home before her first year. That must mean that the trace isn't on the wand until the children enter Hogwarts. This means he can use his wand now, but he'll have to find a way to remove the trace when he returns to the orphanage during Christmas break. Other than worrying about the trace, Tom wondered about wandless magic. Should he try to train it or not? He decided to wait and study a bit. Once he understood magic better, he'd try to work on wandless and maybe wordless magic. Until then he'll practice with his wand. During the month before school, Tom spent the large majority of that time studying and practicing magic. The first book he picked up was a book that explains what magic is and how to use it. The book stated that magic is based on the imagination, willpower, confidence, and hard work of the person wielding it. Imagination to visualize the outcome. Willpower to bring that imagination to life. Confidence that what you want will happen. Last but certainly not least, hard work to practice until the spell is like second nature. There's no such thing as talented witches and wizards, just those who work harder than the rest. The first time that Tom practiced a spell, he took the words in this book to heart. He drew his wand, imagined a bright light, and said the words, Lumos. The tip of his wand flickered for a moment but nothing grand happened. He believes that he has the imagination, willpower, and confidence down. He just had to do the hard work. He dedicated a sizable portion of his time to practicing spells until they worked 100 out of 100 times. After these sessions of constantly practicing spells, Tom would be exhausted. This is when he learned that magic is like energy inside of him. Once that energy has been used up, he gets extremely tired and can't do any more spells until it's refilled. Maybe my magic capacity will increase the more I use it up. I could swear I've read a fan fiction that said something about that. Tom thought and decided to keep tiring himself every time he practiced. Since he would get tired after his magic practice, Tom would save that for the time before bed. Throughout the day, he would read and absorb as much knowledge as he possibly could, and with his perfect recall, that wasn't so hard for Tom. He also wanted to read some advanced books, but he decided to start slow and build upwards. Once he understood magic, he can delve into things like alchemy, rituals, and other high-level studies. For now, Tom focused on the Hogwarts curriculum. Although, the curriculum is a bit different from what Tom remembers from the story. He didn't notice at the time, but one of the books on his list of school supplies was a book on the dark arts. Does this mean that Hogwarts teaches dark arts? Tom thought. The only explanation for this is that Dumbledore removed that class once he was appointed to the headmaster position. Either that or this is a slightly different version of the story, but Tom will go with the first explanation until he sees more evidence to the contrary. Tom didn't just study magic, no, he also studied 2 other subjects. These subjects being the magical government and pureblood wizarding etiquette. He learned a lot about both subjects. On the subject of the Ministry of Magic and the Wizengamot, Tom learned that the Ministry of Magic is the main governing body of the magical community of Great Britain, which consists of England, Scotland, and Wales, along with Ireland, with the intention of preservation of magical law. The headquarters of the ministry is located in Whitehall, in central London, deep underground. It is headed by the Minister for Magic, who is an elected official. While the Wizengamot is Wizarding Britain's High Court of Law and Parliament. It's the legislative and judicial branch of Wizarding Britain and predates the Ministry of Magic itself, dating back to the days of the medieval Wizards' Council, which was during the time of Tom's ancestors, Slytherin, Arthur, and Morgana. Its administrative headquarters is located in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement of the Ministry of Magic, whilst the trials took place in the dungeons of the lower levels. Although the Minister of Magic has a say in the Wizengamot's proceedings, through a single vote as any other member has, the leader of the Wizengamot is the Chief Warlock. The Chief Warlock is a position someone is nominated for and voted on by members of the Wizengamot. Speaking of members of the Wizengamot, it's split into 2 sides. The members of Parliament that have been voted for by the people, and those that sit in hereditary seats. Tom has 3 of these seats waiting for him upon his graduation, which means he will hold 3 votes. The Pendragon, Lefay, and Slytherin seats. The Gaunts have long been banned from the halls of government due to their crazy behavior, so there's no Gaunt seat waiting for him. As for the etiquette, Tom needed to learn it for his inevitable time in Slytherin House. He learned and practiced basic etiquette that any pure-blooded wizard would be taught from birth. Many things aligned with Muggle etiquette, like unless you are physically prevented from doing so, always stand when you greet someone. Only those of a higher social standing can sit while greeting someone of lower standing. Also, handshakes aren't really a thing in the wizarding world. You simply nod in greeting and move on with whatever conversation that proceeds. The list goes on and on with minute details of what to do and what not to do. While Tom was pondering over the past months, he hears a pop and an elf dressed in clothes with the Hogwarts seal appeared. Maybe I should get my elves a uniform as well. Tom thought as his elves are wearing rags at the moment. Tommy Riddle, sir. The elf says and Tom's eyebrow twitches. Hopefully, my elves didn't hear him and start calling me that as well. Creators THOUGHTS Chapter 19, C19 Arriving at Hogwarts. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 6 chapters ahead at Chapter 25. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. The house elf popped Tom directly onto Platform 9 March 4th, so he didn't get the chance to run through the wall. As soon as Tom's feet touched the platform, the elf said its goodbyes and swiftly left to perform other elfly duties. The platform is packed with different families seeing their children off for another year at Hogwarts. Children dressed in robes and some muggle-borns not already in their robes could be seen boarding an impressive red train. Tom decided to wear his wizarding robes even though he doesn't quite like wizarding fashion. He would have to wear the robes every day for the foreseeable future, so he might as well start now. He also took off his heir rings, as he won't be revealing his heirships to anyone just yet. Since he had no one to say goodbye to, Tom boarded the train and found an empty compartment all to himself. Looking out the window, a small part of Tom was jealous of the students with parents to see them off. The old Tom had no idea what he was missing out on, so he didn't feel this way, but the new Tom has Gregory's life experience. Gregory had loving parents that would have come to see him off as these children have. Since I don't have my own family, I'll just have to make my own as Voldemort did, except they won't be a bunch of racist murderers. I'll make the Death Eaters into something that even Harry Potter would be honored to call himself. Maybe I should change the name though. Whatever, I have time to think this stuff up. Tom swore to himself. Once it was time to set out and every student was on board, the train blew its whistle and moved down the tracks. Not long after the train set out, a knock could be heard on Tom's compartment door. I was hoping to be left alone until we arrived. At least they have the manners to knock before entering. Tom thought. You may enter. He calls out loud enough for whoever is outside to hear. The door swings open to reveal a group of 3 first years. 2 boys and 1 girl. They peek their heads into the compartment and see that Tom is alone. Tom stands up as they enter the compartment, and gets ready to use his newly learned wizarding etiquette. Hello, all of the compartments leading to yours are full. Would you mind if we sit with you? I'm Orion Black by the way. A slightly tall black-haired and gray-eyed boy with an aristocratic face introduces himself. No, please come sit. I'm Thomas Riddle, but you can call me Tom. Tom says, not hiding his muggle last name at all. Wasn't Orion the father of Sirius? Whatever, it doesn't matter, as the future will inevitably change due to my actions. Tom thought. Although Tom didn't hide his muggle name, due to his perfect etiquette and state of dress the 3 purebloods second-guessed themselves. Is Riddle a pureblood house? Each of them thought and couldn't remember for sure whether it is or isn't. Thanks for the invitation. Searching for another compartment would have been tiring. Orion says, and seeing as he and Tom are already introduced, Orion introduces his 2 companions. These are my friends Abraxas Malfoy. He says and motions towards the white blonde-haired boy with silver eyes beside him, who simply nods towards Tom. Abraxas wouldn't waste his time with someone that isn't a confirmed pureblood. He looks a bit similar to his grandson Draco Malfoy. And Druella Rosier. Orion then motions towards a cute red-headed girl with green eyes. It's nice to meet you, Tom. Druella says with a small smile on her face. It's nice to meet you as well. Tom replies with his own smile in return. Well, feel free to settle in. It's a long ride to Hogwarts. At Tom's prompt, they make themselves at home and everyone sits down. Orion and Abraxas sit across from Tom and Druella. Throughout the ride to Hogwarts, Tom learned a bit about each person. Orion was a bit of a show-off, but he was good company as long as you are a fellow pureblood, of course. Abraxas is a very quiet person and barely contributed to the conversation. Lastly, Druella is a kind and happy girl. Although she does act a bit spoiled at times. By the time they arrived at Hogwarts, the sun was setting on the horizon. The group of 4 could be said to be almost friends after spending so much time together. Except for Abraxas, as he mostly stayed quiet the whole ride. Once the train stopped, the first years were led to the boats that would take them to the castle. While the second years and up boarded carriages pulled by thestrals. Thestrals are skeletal creatures about the size of a horse, with a reptilian hide, white eyes, and leathery black wings. They are considered a breed of winged horse and are only visible to those that have seen death. Many first-year students were confused as to how the older students would get to the castle in a carriage with no horses. Tom and a few unlucky others could see the thestrals as clear as day. This included his new group of friends. It surprised him that even Druella saw the thestrals. Tom shrugged it off and moved to the boat and boarded with Orion, Abraxas, and Druella. They floated over the Black Lake, and once they went under a bridge the castle was visible from a distance. It was truly a beautiful piece of architecture that caused many children to become speechless. Every first year was mesmerized and would tell the story of their first time seeing Hogwarts for years to come. Suddenly, a child fell off of his boat and into the cold water of the Black Lake. Many of the students gasped in shock as a few purebloods laughed and said something about stupid mudbloods. As the boy that fell into the lake tried and failed to swim, a giant tentacle breached the surface and wrapped around him. Screams of horror could be heard as the children saw a monster grab the drowning boy. Then the unthinkable happened. The tentacle picked the boy out of the water and placed him gently onto his boat. The tentacle then went back into the water and disappeared. Many students stared into the air shocked at what just happened. The person that was guiding them towards the castle then goes on to explain about the Black Lake and its inhabitants. The merpeople and the giant squid that just made its appearance. Once they arrived at the shore, everyone had already calmed down and the boy that almost drowned was magically dried off. The first years were then taken to the front doors of Hogwarts where they were greeted by Dumbledore himself. He invited everyone in and spotted Tom chatting with 3 pureblood children from dark families. He expects Tom to be sorted into Slytherin based on the crowd he's surrounding himself with. I'll have to watch the boy carefully. I have a bad feeling about him. Dumbledore thought as he escorts the new first years into the castle. The other students have already arrived and are seated in the Great Hall. If you don't already know, you're all about to be sorted into one of the 4 houses of Hogwarts. They are Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin. In Hogwarts, your housemates are like your family. You will live with them, eat with them, and study with them. The remainder of your 7 years here will be spent in one of those houses. Dumbledore explains and many children get nervous. Though you have nothing to worry about, as your house is chosen based on what would suit you. Now, I'm going to go and make sure everything is ready. Tidy yourselves up as you'll be in front of the whole school for the sorting. Chapter 20, C20 sorting. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 7 chapters ahead at chapter 27. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. While waiting for Dumbledore to return, Druella asked Tom an important question. Tom, which house do you want to be in? She asks and her 2 companions' ears perk up at the question. I don't really care which house I'm sorted into, but I'll most likely be in Slytherin. Tom answers. Why do you think you'll be in Slytherin? Because you're a pureblood. Abraxas speaks to Tom for the first time since he's met him. Who said that I was a pureblood? Tom asks aloud and all 3 of them widen their eyes in shock. Is he actually not a pureblood? They all think at the same time. Even Abraxas, who doubted Tom at first, was starting to believe in Tom's blood purity. Before any of them could reply, Tom started talking again. As for why I believe I'll be in Slytherin, it's just a feeling I have. Although, I could probably fit in any of the houses. I like to think that I'm brave enough for Gryffindor, studious enough for Ravenclaw, loyal enough for Hufflepuff, and ambitious enough for Slytherin. Tom says, leaving the 3 even further shocked. As they were about to say something, Dumbledore returned and brought them into the Great Hall. The hall is exactly as it was in the movies. Floating candles lit up the room with 4 tables, grand tables. Looking up, Tom could see the beautiful night sky that's not polluted by the bright lights of London. At the back of the room opposite the entrance, the staff of the school sat and observed their new students. Tom didn't recognize anyone except Headmaster Dippet and Professor Slughorn. The first years were told to form a line in the middle of the room and wait patiently for their names to be called. Ever since Orion and Abraxas found out about Tom's blood status, they've been putting more and more space between them and him as every second goes by. As for Druella, she still stands next to him with an unsure look on her face. She was taught to avoid people like Tom, but she considers him a new friend. She didn't know whether to join her friends in distancing themselves or to stick by her new friend because that's what friends do. While Druella was having her inner crisis, Headmaster Armando Dippet stood from his seat and addressed his students. Welcome to the new first years and welcome back to our returning students. I know that all of you have had a long journey here and you want to eat, but we have to go about the sorting first. Let the sorting begin. He announces and Dumbledore brings up a stool and places a dusty hat on it. Oh God, here it comes. Tom thought as he knows what the hat is about to do. A/N, like I said with the Gringotts poem. These are time-honored traditions. In times of old when I was new and Hogwarts barely started. The founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. United by a common goal, they had the selfsame yearning. To make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. And now the sorting hat is here and you all know the score. I sort you into houses because that is what I'm for. But this year I'll go further, listen closely to my song. Though condemned I am to sort you, still I worry that it's wrong. Together we will build and teach. The four good friends decided. And never did they dream that they might one day be divided. For were there ever friends like Slytherin and Gryffindor? Like Helga and Rowena, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw? So how could it have gone so wrong? How could such friendships fail? Now, I was there and so can tell the whole sad, sorry tale. Said Slytherin, we'll teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw, we'll teach those whose intelligence is surest. Said Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot, and treat them just the same. These things were not a problem, when first they came to light. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted, so, for instance, Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning, just like him. And only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw. While the bravest and the boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest, and taught them all she knew. So the houses and their founders were all friends and firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. But then anger crept up on us, feeding on our faults and fears. The houses that, like pillars four, had once held up our school, now turned upon each other and they tried to win and rule. And for a while it seemed the school must meet a sticky end. With dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend. And at last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out he left us quite downhearted. And never since the founders four were whittled down to three have the houses been united, as they once were meant to be. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year. Still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. Oh, know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows. For Hogwarts is in danger from our cruel and deadly foes. But maybe this year is different. As we have a special guest. He could bring about a hopeful change. Of that, I do not jest. It's for him I sing this sad, sad song. To explain our history. For will he truly bring about a change? Now that is a mystery. You must unite the broken houses or will crumble from within. I have told you. I have warned you. Let the sorting now begin. A/N, I didn't write this by the way, but I did tweak the ending for plot purposes. That was not what Tom was expecting to happen. He expected an annoying happy-go-lucky song about the houses and sorting. As the hat got to the part about the special guest, Tom could feel that it was talking about him. Was his presence here foretold by one of the founders? It could be that the castle is asking for help. Many of the fan fictions Tom has read say that the school is sentient. If it is, then it could have sensed Tom, as he owns the school, and reached out through the hat for his help. That seems to be an explanation worth looking into. I have to speak with the hat alone. I'll be able to speak to it when I'm called, I guess. Tom thought as the first batch of students were called up. Tom waited patiently for the students to be sorted into their houses. By the time his name was called, Orion, Abraxas, and Druella were already sorted into Slytherin and sitting among their new housemates. Thomas Riddle. Dumbledore called, and Tom walked up and took out his wand. Dumbledore dropped the hat onto the stool in reflex and almost reached for his wand, but then he heard the spell Tom called out. Scour Jiffy, Tom called as he waved his wand. Suddenly, the dirty and dusty hat was cleaned and looking as good as new. Why didn't anyone think of this? The faculty and older students thought at the same time. Haha, I feel centuries younger. Thank you. The hat laughs as it wiggles its brim happily. You're welcome. Tom says as he takes the hat into his hands and places it atop his head. Hello, hat. Good evening, Heir Slytherin, Chapter 21, C21 Sorting, 2. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 8 chapters ahead at Chapter 29. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. Hello, hat. Hello, Slytherin's heir. Might I say that it's splendid to have the first heir of Salazar Slytherin attending Hogwarts. Though I wasn't very close to the man, I was close to his best friend. The hat says in a delighted tone. Am I really the first heir of Slytherin to attend the school? Tom asks curiously. Not only that, but you are also the first Slytherin heir ever. All of Salazar's descendants before you didn't fit the bald snake's requirements. He was a man with very high expectations. The hat said, reminiscing the old days. So, what's with the song this year? Tom asks, bring the hat back from its memories. That is something you have to speak to Lady Hogwarts about. I was merely instructed to give a message. The hat says mysteriously. All right, what's the message? Tom asks. The message was already given. Once the houses are united, Lady Hogwarts will give you full control of the castle. The hat explains. I already own the place. Tom says, thinking that he could just take control as it's his property. Yes, on paper you do, but you don't own Lady Hogwarts. The castle has been sentient since the time of the founders, and you can't own a sentient being. You could try to take over forcibly, but she wields the power of multiple intersecting ley lines. She passively uses more magic in a day than 100 normal wizards use in a lifetime. You have to earn her loyalty in order to gain control of the castle, and let me tell you, having full access to the castle ward stone will make you nearly invincible on Hogwarts grounds. The hat says, enticing Tom to complete Lady Hogwarts' mission. Fine, I'll see what I can do. But no promises. Tom agrees but doesn't look hopeful as the houses have hated and made fun of each other for a long time. Good. On behalf of Lady Hogwarts, I thank you for coming to her aid. The hat says respectfully. This isn't going to be easy. Tom thought to himself. Gryffindor, in the eyes of the other houses, is seen as the house for idiotic wannabe heroes that act first and think later. Ravenclaws are thought of as nerdy bookworms that constantly have their nose in a book. Hufflepuff is thought of as the house of the leftovers, and Slytherin is the house of dark wizards and blood purity bigots. Now, how is Tom supposed to unite these houses that do nothing but badmouth one another? Tom wouldn't be surprised if duels happened regularly between members of different houses. Not all of them do this, but many would rather keep the company of their own house. Why haven't you breached my mind to see what house I belong in? Tom asks as the hat hasn't read his mind at all. The only thing the hat is currently doing is communicating with Tom telepathically. The hat is basically standing outside of his Wakandan shield and yelling into Tom's inner world. It wouldn't matter if I did, as Salazar had clear directions. If an heir of his were to enroll in Hogwarts, I am to sort them into Slytherin no matter what. The hat explains. Well, my job is done. Goodbye, heir Slytherin. The hat yells the last word out loud for everyone in the Great Hall to hear. Wait, how can I contact you or Lady Hogwarts? Tom asks quickly. You don't. The hat said as Dumbledore pulled the hat off of Tom's head. While Tom was ignoring everyone in the Great Hall and talking with the hat, it took almost 4 minutes for his sorting to end. Once the hat called out Slytherin, everyone at the Slytherin table remained quiet. Not a single sound of celebration could be heard from the entire house. The older students who were more knowledgeable knew that Riddle wasn't a pure-blood house, unlike Tom's friends, who are first years. Those that weren't sure just followed the older kids' lead. The other house merely clapped lightly out of courtesy. As Dumbledore took the hat off of Tom's head, he couldn't help but sigh. Maybe Slytherin house will knock some sense into the boy. Although, I wouldn't wish any Muggle-born to be sorted into Slytherin. Dumbledore thought as he knew the coming years would be eventful, one way or another. First, we get a foreboding song from the hat, and now I have to worry about a kid, who could be some sort of serial killer, being sorted into a den of snakes. Why can't my job be easier? After the hat is taken from Tom's head, he stands up and walks to the Slytherin table. None of the children wanted to sit next to him, so they bunched together to block him from sitting next to them. As Tom was about to give up and sit at the end of the table, a female voice could be heard calling him over to her. Tom, come sit next to me. Druella calls as she pushes a fellow first year, who was sitting next to her, to make room for Tom. After a few more first years got sorted, the sorting ended and the headmaster Dippet gave a short speech about a new year and prohibiting children from entering the Forbidden Forest. Food then appeared on every table, and the students and staff dug into the feast before them. Once everyone was finished eating, the students were guided to their common rooms. Tom and the other first years were taken to the dungeons, where they were brought to a stone wall. One of the older students said the password and the wall opened, revealing the Slytherin common room. The prefect guiding them also warned of forgetting the password or giving out said password to non-Slytherin students. Once all of the children entered the common room, Professor Slughorn, who is the head of Slytherin House, gave a speech and listed off a few rules. Basically, he said that Slytherin is like a family, and we should act as such. Especially in front of other houses. Slughorn offered his time to speak with any student about problems they may face in the coming year, and handed out class schedules. Before leaving, Slughorn bragged a bit about his prestigious Slug Club, and told everyone that their rooms were labeled with their names on the door. When Slughorn left, every Slytherin student went their own way and ignored Tom's presence. These students were keeping their distance as if Tom carried a deadly virus. They wouldn't go within 10 feet of him, and that included Orion and Abraxas. Orion was a bit more subtle with it, but Abraxas was sending Tom sideways glares whenever he had the chance. The only person that stayed by Tom's side is Druella. She may be a blood purist like her family, but once she calls somebody her friend, she holds true to her word. Throughout all of this, Tom was happy that Slytherins received their own rooms. He could tell that everyone in the house was shunning him, besides Druella, of course. Tom could also tell that if he tried to confront any of these people, they would most certainly react violently. Tom merely shrugged, as he had a feeling that this would happen. He would have to wait and show these purebloods that he is a far more skilled wizard than any of them. Purebloods respect power, and Tom would have that in spades sooner or later. That's one of the reasons Voldemort won them over in canon. Might is right, after all. If Tom had an overwhelming power to support him, these children would fall in line fairly easily. Maybe a few would put up a resistance, but Tom can deal with a few children easily. It's their parents he worries about. If I want to bring the houses together again, as the Hat said, I'll have to start with the most problematic house, Slytherin. It would have to be purged of the bigotry and hate before I can even think of other houses. I just have to keep with my training plan and do the best I can in my classes. Tom thinks as he and Druella go searching for their rooms. Chapter 22, see 22, A Duel Between Friends. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 9 chapters ahead at chapter 31. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. The girls' dormitory is separated from the boys', so Druella and Tom had to separate. It's up a flight of stairs that's warded against boys. Tom was a bit worried about his new friend. Druella is his first real friend in this world, and she picked a horrible time to come into his life. He's just worried that the Slytherin girls will bully her for being close to the mudblood. In these people's eyes, Tom isn't even a half-blood, he's a muggle-born that was sorted into the great house of Salazar Slytherin. Girls can be very mean when they want to be, and he worries for his friend's safety. He knows that they are just kids, but who knows if one of them throws a curse at her and maims or worse kills hers. As Tom was thinking of this, he found his room fairly easily. It was very easy to find as it had the words, "Dirty Mudblood," carved into the wooden door directly under his nameplate. Tom merely sighed and walked into his new room. Thankfully, nothing in the room was damaged. Tom knew things like this would happen, but it's still annoying to have to deal with it. Though he did prepare for this. He read about wards and found something that even someone of his skill level can do with a bit of difficulty. He pulled his pendant-sized trunk off of his bracelet, enlarged the trunk, and pumped a bit of magic into the lock to open it. Tom searches through his trunk until he found his carving tools. He then walked to the door and spent the next half an hour carving some fairly easy runes and arrays into the door. Although the runes are easy, that doesn't mean they were easy to him. He's only had a month of magic study and practice. Even with his perfect recall, he still needs more time to hone his skills. Tom can remember the runes and arrays perfectly, but he needs more time to practice carving them. Once he was finished carving, Tom double-checked everything just to be sure. He doesn't want the door to implode on itself because of faulty carving. As he saw that everything seemed good, he placed his hand on the center of an array and activated the ward. The door shone faintly for a moment as the ward was powered by Tom's magic. The ward itself is nothing that special. It will reinforce the door magically and no one but Tom can get in, as the key to enter is Tom's magic. That will simultaneously keep people out and power the ward regularly. Once Tom finished with his work, he walked out of the room to test it. Everything worked perfectly, and as he was about to go back into his room, he heard a group of girls arguing. Worried that it may be Druella being picked on, Tom follows the voices to the stairs that lead to the girls' dormitory. As he was about to peek up the stairs, he suddenly heard Druella's voice yell the name of a spell. Depulso. She yelled, and suddenly an older female student came flying down the stairs and smacked into the floor. As Tom stepped around the knocked-out older girl, he could see an irate Druella holding her wand and threatening some other girls. Maybe I was worrying for nothing. She seems to be able to handle herself fairly well. Tom thought as a small smile appeared on his lips. "Hey, Drew," he called out. "Did you find your room already?" Druella glances sideways towards Tom while keeping her wand trained on the frightened elder students. At first, they wanted to help Druella and explain that her friend is a dirty mudblood, but Druella just wouldn't listen. Seeing as she wanted to be friends with Muggle-born filth, they decided to start bullying her as Tom feared. Except it didn't go well for them, based on the knocked-out girl that just flew down the stairs. Now the elder students can't even draw their wands, as Druella has hers pointed at them, waiting for the slightest twitch to send them hurtling down the stairs as well. "Yeah, I did. Did you find yours as well?" Druella says as she shoos the older students away with her wand. "You can go now." "Yeah, I already settled in. Do you want to go and explore for a bit before bed?" Tom says as he completely ignores the now retreating students. "Yeah, let's go." And Drew, really?" she says with a happy smile as the students have already left. "I think it fits you," Tom says as they walk off. Druella and Tom explore the dungeons outside of the Slytherin common room. The castle is far too big for them to go too far, as it's already getting late. While they walk, Tom decided to get a bit serious. "You do know that being friends with me will alienate you from the rest of our house, right?" Tom says as they walk the empty halls. "Yeah, but when I make friends I don't just abandon them like some people," she says, referring to Orion and Abraxas. Well, maybe not Abraxas, as he didn't talk enough to become friends with Tom. "Alright, but what will your parents think? Aren't they hardcore blood purists?" Tom asks. "Yeah, but it's not like I'm going to marry you. They'll be mad for a bit, but I'll work my magic and they'll get over it," she says with a small laugh. "Alright, but if it's going to be me and you against the world, we need to take some precautions and start your training. I can't have my first friend getting bullied, hurt, or worse," Tom says, and Druella raises an eyebrow at him. "You do know that I was trained in magic years before you even received your acceptance letter," she says with a bit of arrogance in her voice. "Oh, really? I propose a bet. We will have a friendly duel. If I win, you will follow my training schedule," Tom offers with a confident smirk. "What do I get when I win?" she asks with her own confident smirk. "What do you want?" Tom asks back. I want you to be my servant for an entire day," she says with an innocent expression. "Alright, deal." Tom agrees easily. "This place is as good as any, so let's have our duel now." "Hee, I can't wait to have my own manservant," Druella says as they stand 15 feet apart and take out their wands. "We'll see what happens. Are you ready?" Tom asks as he pulls out a shiny gold galleon. "Yeah, how should we start this?" Drew asks. "I'm going to toss this coin between us. The second it hits the ground, the duel will commence," Tom says and tosses the coin. The coin flips through the air, flipping as it makes its way to the stone floor of the dungeon floor. As they heard it hit the ground, each of them fires a spell. "Locomotor Mortis," Drew yelled as lightning sparked on her wand. "Protego," Tom called as the lightning shot from her wand. The magical lightning traveled through the air and impacted an invisible shield before it could touch Tom. The spell bounced off the shield and impacted the dungeon's ceiling. Druella, who wasn't taking the duel seriously a moment ago, became extremely serious. Protego isn't a spell that first years are taught, as it's hard to picture something invisible. Even her parents haven't taught her that spell yet. When Tom saw her confident smirk disappear, he smiled and motioned for her to bring it on. "Titilando," she calls, and Tom sidesteps another bolt of magic, but Druella was hoping for this. "Stupefy," She calls and aims her wand at where Tom is stepping. Protego, locomotor mortis, stupefy, expelliarmus. Tom says consecutively, and a shield once again blocks Druella's attack. Then he fires the same leg-locking curse that she fired at him, and she sidestepped it fairly easily. Then came the last two spells, which caused her a bit more trouble. Although she was able to dodge being stupefied, in order to do so she had to dive to the ground. The second she landed on the ground, the last spell hit her, and Druella's wand launched out of her hand, landing a few feet in front of where Tom is standing casually. "It looks like I've won," Tom calls it as he steps forward and picks up her wand. Training starts bright and early at 3 a.m. every morning. Be up and ready by then, please. Chapter 23, C23 Classes. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 10 chapters ahead at Chapter 33. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. After winning the duel, Tom went back to the dormitory to sleep for the next day. Druella was very pouty after her loss, but she would keep her word. The next morning, Tom woke up bright and early as usual. After quickly cleaning himself up a bit, he waited for Druella at the bottom of the stairs. She actually arrived on time, but with every step she took, she glares at Tom for making her wake up so early. She is a growing girl and needs her beauty sleep, after all. They went and searched the castle for some sort of unused room that they can use for their training. They ended up finding an abandoned room in the dungeons that's almost as big as a gymnasium. A few scour jiffy spells here and there and the place was perfect. Tom has been exercising his magic but not his body, so he decided that he'd do some exercises to stay in shape before getting to magic. Druella was furious when he told her to start running with him. Witches and wizards are not the athletic types, as they have the crutch that is magic supporting them. After running around the room a few times, they did basic exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, etc. Once they finished working their muscles, neither of them wanted to get up off the cold floor. "I hate this," Druella said as she melts into the floor. "Me too, but with perseverance, we will have stronger and better-looking bodies than our peers. We'll also become better duelists," Tom says, and Druella was already sold at having a better body than her peers. She's a girl, after all. After tiring their bodies, Tom started a lesson on occlumency. Druella has already learned a bit of it, but not to the same extent as Tom. He needed her to be able to protect his secrets before he can even think of telling her anything. Although, that wouldn't happen for a while. Until then he will help fortify her mind. Once Tom finished his lesson on occlumency, they both took out books they were working on and studied for a bit. Tom would practice spells with her, but he does that before bed. He made sure to tell her to do that as well though. After about an hour of reading, they went back to the dormitory to clean themselves up and went for breakfast in the Great Hall. They ate at the end of the table away from the other Slytherins. Orion was looking at Tom and Druella with a complicated expression, while Abraxas completely ignores them and eats among his fellow purebloods. Breakfast was fairly quick and the students were told to go to their first classes. All first years at Hogwarts must take 9 core subjects: transfiguration, charms, potions, history of magic, dark arts, defense, astronomy, herbology, and flying lessons. Although flying lessons can be dropped upon entry into the second year. Today is Monday, so Tom has history of magic and transfiguration. Tuesday is charms and defense. Wednesday is flying lessons and herbology. Thursday is dark arts and potions. Friday is astronomy, which takes place at midnight. After that is the weekend, so no classes. Then it picks back up again on Monday. A/N, all of you should know what these classes are. I'm not going to waste words on explaining them, except dark arts, as that's a class I've added. Defense is dada, but since I added dark arts it would be odd to call it its original name. Druella and Tom walked to classes together and sat next to each other in every one. History of magic and transfiguration were the same as in the movie. History is taught by the same ghost, Professor Binns. He wasn't what all of the fan fictions made him out to be. He wasn't monotone and boring, nor did he spend all of his time on Goblin Wars. Tom enjoyed being taught by a ghost, as it was interesting to watch. After history was lunch, where once again Tom and Druella ate at the end of the table away from everyone else. Transfiguration, on the other hand, was hard to get through for Tom, as Dumbledore would watch him like a hawk. Tom felt as if he were just waiting to nitpick at anything Tom did wrong. Tom couldn't even whisper or pass notes to Druella, as Dumbledore would take house points away. When that first happened, the other Slytherin first years would glare at Tom and Druella like their worst enemy. *I**Did no one tell these children that winning the house cup gets them nothing? The cup goes on a shelf that belongs to none of the students until next year. There's no point in worrying over house points. Tom sighed. After classes ended for the day, Tom and Druella hung out together and tried to meet some of the members of the other houses. If they couldn't be friends with those in their house, they might as well mingle with the rest. Gryffindor was impossible to make friends with, as the rivalry between the two houses has long been sour. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were fairly welcoming, and they made a few friends here and there. The week passed and Tom has sat through the first class of every subject. In the mornings he trains and studies with Druella, and at night he practices spells until he's exhausted. Druella does the same and is starting to believe Tom when he said her magical reserves would grow. All of the classes were as they were in the Harry Potter fictions. Except for dark arts and potions. Dark arts because it was never a class in the story, and potions because Slughorn was actually a good teacher compared to Snape. Dark arts is taught by a man that you wouldn't expect to be a master of the dark arts. He looks like a well-groomed happy guy and smiled almost all the time. He seemed perfectly sane, and he was the complete opposite of any Death Eater from canon Harry Potter. The first lesson was about how to protect your mind, body, and soul while practicing the dark arts. Dark arts was truly Tom's favorite class so far. The dark arts, also known as dark magic, refers to any type of magic that is mainly used to cause harm. The dark arts encompass many spells and actions ranging from using the unforgivable curses, which wouldn't be taught as they are illegal, to brewing harmful or poisonous potions to breeding dark creatures such as basilisks. The class was introduced by Morgana Le Fay, and she was the first person to teach the class at Hogwarts. Many of the more light-centered families usually pull their children from this class, and the school allows it. When the weekend came, Tom wanted to go to the room of requirement. The problem was, he didn't fully trust Druella yet. Mainly because her occlumency could be breached at any time. Druella and Tom are together almost all the time, and he doesn't want to bring her with him. The room of requirement is far too valuable to be leaked to anyone, so he wants to go alone. Since he can't take her with him, he plans to sneak out of the dormitory and spend the night there exploring all the room has to offer, as his days are spent mostly with Druella. He also wants to go to the Chamber of Secrets, but that will wait until Tom is strong enough. There's a basilisk down there, and Tom doesn't know if it would attack him or not. That snake has been living in isolation for a long time, so who knows what it would do. On the other hand, it could be perfectly harmless to Tom, as he is the heir to Slytherin, but he doesn't know this for sure. Instead of rushing in head first, Tom will wait, bide his time, and get stronger. When he's strong enough to at least run away, Tom will go down and see if the big snake is friendly or not. On Saturday night, when Druella had already gone to her room to practice spells, Tom creeped out of the Slytherin common room and went straight to the 7th floor. Once he made it up the constantly changing stairs, Tom looked for the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. After searching for a few minutes, he found it and knew that the entrance is directly across from the tapestry. Tom took a deep breath and imagined what he wanted the room to have. Suddenly, a door appeared on the empty wall and Tom walked in. Chapter 24, C24 ROR. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 11 chapters ahead at chapter 35. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 more chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. Before entering the room of recruitment, ROR, Tom wanted the room to show him all of its contents. As the door closed behind him, it disappeared and a simple wall was left behind. When Tom stepped into the room, it was filled with books, artifacts, gold, jewels, and tons of other junk. The room looked like it went on and on without end. Some places have piles of junk stacked high and others are organized neatly on shelves. Tom knew that he wouldn't be able to make a dent in this mess alone. He originally thought to get a bunch of trunks to rob this place. Trunks in trunks in trunks until he looted the place clean, but Tom doesn't need to rob the ROR as he owns the whole castle. Why waste his time looting things that he already owns? Sooner or later he'll reveal his heirships and ownership of the castle. No one would be able to bar him from the castle. Especially if Lady Hogwarts gives Tom full control. He'll have to make the ROR a bit more hidden and fortified though. After browsing for a short amount of time, Tom left the room and went back in after thinking of what he needed. He walked in again and found 3 books on a table. These books are everything Hogwarts has on the trace that's probably now in his wand. Once he got these specific books, he left again and went back in. This time the room is a giant library. Tom asked for every book on Hogwarts grounds. He also tried to be more specific and asked for them to be well organized. Also, he wanted there to be an area for reading, like a couch or something. Him going into detail paid off and the room made everything as he desired. The rest of the night was spent reading up on the trace. He learned that the trace is placed in a wand the second a student enters the Hogwarts wards. Once the wards catalog a student as having the trace, it will no longer try to insert the trace again. As a 7th year leaves the school for the last time, the trace is removed by the wards as well. The way it's removed is actually explained in the last book. Once the trace is removed, no one in the school or government is notified, and the only way to know that the trace is gone is to cast a few diagnostic spells on his wand. I don't think that I have to worry too much about that happening. Even if someone does end up doing it one day, I can just play dumb and say I have no idea how the trace works. Tom thought. Tom somehow made it through all 3 books with a bit of time to spare, so he decided to try and see if his perfect recall could come in handy for something. He left the room again and thought of the exact ritual that is needed to remove the trace. Using his perfect recall to the max, Tom added as many extra details as he possibly could. Once he was finished, Tom entered the room and everything was as he thought. The room of requirement was definitely used for rituals. Tom thought as he looks around the room and sees the ritual described to remove the trace set up perfectly. As long as you have the ingredients in Hogwarts, setting up the ritual is as easy as giving the room some instructions. With this, I can practice rituals without having much experience in creating them. The floor of the room was covered in arrays and runes written in different inks and types of blood. Candles are placed at various sections and in the center of it all is a pedestal to place his wand. Tom walks carefully in between the arrays and runes, as not to smudge anything. Once he gets to the center of the room, he places his wand on the pedestal and backtracks his way out the same way he came. Once he was out of the ritual area, Tom walks over to a certain array and places his hand in the middle of it. He then pumps a bit of his magic into the array and the whole ritual area lights up like a Christmas tree. Tom actually didn't need to supply that much magic, as the castle took over and pumped magic straight from the ley lines under it. This room was 100% made for rituals. Tom nodded his head. Once the light got to its brightest, there was a sound signifying the breaking of the trace. It sounded like a glass shattering. Tom's bone-looking wand glowed for a moment after the sound and the ritual ended. The light from the arrays and runes disappeared, and Tom walked over to grab his wand. Now that the trace is gone, I can use magic as much as I want when I leave school. World War II should be starting next year, so being able to use magic will help a lot. Maybe I should kill Hitler. Being known as the guy that killed the most hated man ever would be pretty cool. I bet people would line up for days to see the memory of me killing Hitler. Grindelwald too, if I'm strong enough by that time. No reason to give Dumbledore fame and an overpowered wand. Tom put these thoughts to the back of his mind for now. After the ritual was completed, Tom left the room and thought of a comfortable bedroom. He needed to get some sleep and the common rooms lock after a certain time. Once he had a good place to sleep, Tom spent some time practicing magic until he exhausted himself and swiftly went to sleep. The next day, Tom wakes up and rushes back to the common room to pick up Druella for their training. The second he gave the password and entered, Druella could be seen sitting on the couch waiting for him. "Where were you? I knocked on your door last night and you didn't answer," she asks with an upturned eyebrow. The girls' dormitory may be warded against men, but the boys' isn't warded against anyone. Does the school not think women can be creeps too, or that couples won't just go to the boys' dorms? Tom sighed in his mind as he wishes she would just leave it alone. "What were you doing at my door last night anyway? Wanted to sneak in and do horrible things to me in my sleep." Tom jokes and tries to change the subject. "What, no. It's the weekend, so I thought we could hang out and play some chess or something," she says as she turns her nose upwards at Tom. "Now stop trying to change the subject and tell me already." "I can't tell you. I won't lie and say I was exploring or something like that, but I won't be saying where I was and what I was doing." Tom says, not wanting to lie to his first friend that ruined her reputation for him. Fine, but I expect an explanation sooner or later. She sighs and decides to drop it for now. Thanks, now are you ready for our training? Yeah, let's go. Chapter 25, see 25 times skip. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 10 chapters ahead at chapter 35. I took a break last night from writing. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight though. Thanks for the power stones and enjoy the chapter. Time passed quickly and before Tom knew it Christmas break had arrived. Throughout almost 4 months at Hogwarts, Tom has shown his skills in every class. He purposefully gets the best grades in all classes, to boost his reputation as much as possible. Also, Tom has tried his best to be friendly with every house, as he has a mission from Lady Hogwarts to complete. This even includes Gryffindor, and he has started making some headway in that house. Due to the other Slytherins ignoring Tom and Druella's existence and openly badmouthing them, Gryffindor and the other houses have started to see them as good people that were sorted into the wrong house. This has helped Tom and Druella make many friends outside of Slytherin House. As for Slytherin House itself, there's been very little headway made on that front. Although some of the students have started to respect Tom for his skill in magic, they still won't be caught dead fraternizing with a mudblood. Tom did learn a bit about how Slytherin House operates though. Slytherin is nothing like the other houses. The house is led by the students with the highest standing and most connections in a sort of council. They are like the cool kids that everyone wants to be friends with, but they also hold the most power among the Slytherin students. The current students in the council are some of the grandparents or great-grandparents to some canon Death Eaters. As long as Tom and Druella don't ruin the reputation of the house or lose an obscene amount of house points, the council tends to leave them alone. In fact, if Tom wasn't a mudblood, they would be singing his praises due to how many house points he has gained them. Being the top student among the first years has awarded him a ton of house points, even if he thinks they're pointless. Other than that, Tom and Druella have been staying as low as possible when it comes to their house. Orion and Abraxas still ignore them as usual, but Orion may be coming around. He seems to be friendly with Druella again, but that only tends to happen when no one else is around. Tom has also been visiting the ROR regularly to find anything that might pique his interest. He's found many books that were either from the restricted section or someone's personal collection. Just to test it, he's been taking books he knows are from the library, and checking to see if they're still there or not. He learned that they remained in the library even though the exact copy is in his trunk. That taught him that, at least for books, the ROR made copies instead of taking the real ones. After learning this, Tom didn't feel scared to take as many books as he wanted. Although Tom didn't have room in his trunk to take ones he already read with him, so he would put them back in the ROR once he's finished. He has perfect recall anyway, so what's the point in hoarding the books? He also owns the castle, so what's the point in taking books he's already read? Through the past months, Tom has been mainly studying rituals, runes, arrays, and dark magic. Rituals because he found the cheat that is the ROR, and runes and arrays because they're a part of rituals. Although they can be used in things like enchanting as well, but Tom hasn't had time to look into that yet. He hasn't done a single ritual since the wand, as he wants to find the perfect first ritual to enhance his body, soul, mind, and magic. He needs a good base for other future rituals to build off of. As for the dark arts, the canon Tom was a prodigy when it came to dark magic. He didn't want to waste his potential, so he decided to fully commit to the dark arts. Although many precautions had to be made before he could fully dive into the cesspool that is dark magic. As his dark arts teacher says, when using dark magic one must know their limits and cleanse themselves regularly. He says this because using dark magic is like poison to the body and mind. It can turn the most kind-hearted person into a ruthless murderer if not used properly. So, Tom read as many books as possible about protecting the mind, body, and soul while practicing dark magic. They all said to first, perform a cleansing ritual regularly. These rituals are simple and would cleanse any residual dark magic from the body. That residual dark magic is what happens when performing this kind of magic over a period of time. If someone performed this ritual on a canon Death Eater or even Voldemort himself, the amount of dark magic cleansed from them would be immense. Other than doing the cleansing ritual, the book said that occlumency is a smart road to follow, as a secure mind isn't easily swayed. With both body and mind taken care of, Tom found the soul isn't something he has to worry so much about. The book stated that the only way dark arts could affect his soul is if Tom purposeful tries to perform dark magic on it. Similar to how Canon Tom ripped his soul in half to make Horcruxes. He has nothing to worry about as long as he keeps his mind and body safe. With the knowledge on how to stay safe while practicing the dark arts, Tom delved as deep as he could into them. He especially spent some time learning the unforgivables. He added them to his nightly practice as soon as he could. They may be illegal, but they are the best spells for an emergency. Facing a foe that is giving you a hard time. One-shot him with the killing curse. Need some information fast. Imperio the person to tell you everything. Run into a rapist, murderer, or any other all-around garbage person. Crucio them for a couple of minutes before putting them out of their misery. These spells will most definitely come in handy. Especially if Tom wishes to defeat Grindelwald before Dumbledore does. Tom has landed himself in a fairly dangerous world, and he needs every tool at his disposal to carve out a place for himself in it. Other than that, Tom and Druella have kept up with their training every morning. Druella now trusts Tom 100% when he says anything about magic. Since following Tom's training schedule, she's seen the fruits of her labor. She's been counting her lucky stars that she met Tom and became his friend. Just the magic reserve increase alone will make her into a powerhouse in the future. When Christmas break finally came, Tom and Druella left the castle and boarded the Hogwarts Express together. Once they arrived at King's Cross Station, Tom met Druella's parents. They glare for a moment before turning their noses up at him and dragging Druella off. Throughout the whole ordeal, Druella was laughing at Tom's predicament. "Bye, Tom. See you after the break," she yelled as her parents dragged her off. Tom waved goodbye and looked around for whoever was supposed to take him home. After searching for a minute, he just decided to call for the night bus. Once he arrived at the orphanage, Tom said some pleasantries to the matron and went straight to his room. The children continued to keep their distance and even the new ones knew to leave Tom alone. Mimsy. Tom calls as he closed the door to his bedroom. Pop. Master. Mimsy appears with a pop and grabs his leg while crying loudly. What's the matter? Did something happen? Tom asks with a worried expression. No, Mimsy just missed you, she says as she wipes some snot from her face. Master says not to go bothering him at school, so Mimsy listened like a good elf. The only reason that I don't want you visiting the school is I can't reveal myself just yet. It's not about being bothered by you, Mimsy, Tom says, and Mimsy nods with a smile on her face. Are you okay now? Yes, Mimsy is fine, she says as she wipes her tears away. Good, because I need my head elf to take me to Gringotts. Can you do that for me? Tom says, trying to cheer up his favorite elf. Leave it to me, she says happily. Good, we'll leave after the matron comes to say it's time for bed. When it came time to leave, instead of putting on his mask, Tom downs a polyjuice potion key to a muggle-born student from Hogwarts. Tom's body morphs and changes to match said student perfectly. Mimsy freaked out a bit, as she's never seen a polyjuice potion before, but after explaining everything, she calmed down fairly easily. All right, Mimsy. Let's go, Tom says and takes Mimsy's hand, and with a pop, they disappeared from the orphanage. Chapter 26, C26 Realization. I made a Twitter for my writing a while back and never linked it cause I was like, no one would be interested in that, but someone actually followed it. So now I'll start linking it, I guess. If you're interested in it, then follow at Warlord Alien on Twitter. If not, then don't worry about it. *A/N. Want to read ahead of what I've posted so far? Go to my Patreon and get early access chapters. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 11 chapters ahead at chapter 37. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. Mimsy popped Tom, who is under a polyjuice potion, to the indoor apparition area of Gringotts as usual. They then asked for a luck and got a meeting with him fairly easily. The goblins that guard the apparition point couldn't recognize Tom, but they could tell who Mimsy was. Knowing that Mimsy's master liked to wear a mask, it clicked in their heads that he was under a polyjuice potion. Tom could care less that they knew and didn't bother to hide it. All he cared about was that they don't know who he is. They could be suspicious all they want, as it didn't matter to Tom. He and Mimsy were escorted to a meeting room, where Aluk was waiting patiently. "Hello, Aluk. How have your investments with my money been going?" Tom says as he takes a seat with Mimsy standing close behind him. "Straight to business, I see. Although I like the old mask, Polyjuice is far better when concealing your identity. I will be needing an oath that it is you though." Aluk wasn't surprised as he was already told of Tom's new disguise. Tom nodded and gave the oath on his magic easily. He then performed a quick lumos to show that he hadn't lost his magic. "Now, about my investment. What's going on and what have you been doing?" Tom asks as he relaxes into his chair. "I've compiled a list of investments that I've made for you to look over." Aluk says and snaps his fingers. A few pieces of paper appear in his hands and he passes them over to Tom. "Here you go." Tom takes the papers and starts reading them over. Written on the papers are properties he now owned and companies that he now had some stock in. As Tom reads the paper, he notices a few companies that he recognized that would do well in the future. He was sure to emphasize to Aluk that he wanted more stock in these companies. As he was browsing the pages, his eyes went wide and his mouth dropped open. On the page in front of him, he sees a name that couldn't possibly be real. Stark Industries. A/N, I know that Stark Industries wasn't made until 1940 in canon MCU. There's no way that this is real. Tom thought as he rubs his eyes to clear away whatever was causing him to see something like this. "Is something the matter?" Aluk asks as he notices Tom's odd behavior. "Tell me about Stark Industries." Tom asks as his whole aura became serious. "One moment." Aluk says and a paper appears in his hands. Stark Industries is run by its founder Howard Stark, a great pioneer in different types of Muggle technology. He mainly supplies the United States Armed Forces with different and innovative Muggle weapons. The company is still rather new, but Stark is a genius that has brought it from nothing to a main supplier of the United States military. I saw an opportunity to buy a large chunk of stock, so I jumped on it as soon as I could. You currently own 5% of the company. Aluk explains. Holy sh*t. Am I in a crossover? Tom thought as he contemplates his predicament. This is far worse than it was before. At least all I had to worry about before was Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and possibly Harry Potter. That is if he's even born with all that I'm changing. Now I have to worry about beings like Dormammu, Thanos, Loki, Ultron, and the list goes on and on. The worst part is that I've never read the comics. I only watch the movies and TV shows. I can only hope that this is a crossover with the MCU and not the whole Marvel universe. Tom took a deep breath and brought himself under control. Is there something wrong with Stark Industries? Aluk asks as Tom doesn't seem happy to hear about it. No, in fact, buy as much stock as you possibly can. I have a feeling that this company will be huge in the future. Also, I'm going to all you some other company names when I have the time. Tom says and skimmed the rest of the list for any other companies that could shed some light on what type of world he lives in. Nothing else on the list brought back any memories of the MCU, so Tom finished his business with Aluk and went home. When he arrived back in his room with Mimsy, he sat on his bed and thought of what to do now. He planned to get strong enough to wipe the floor with Grindelwald and take his wand. After completing that, Tom would take the place of Dumbledore as the second coming of Merlin and get a powerful wand out of it. He'd then spend the rest of his life relaxing, practicing magic, and preparing for Harry Potter to be born. That is if he were to even be born after all the things Tom has and will change. Now, Tom has to change his plans. Well, maybe not change, but definitely add to them. He has villains and organizations to look out for that would gladly experiment on witches and wizards, as they did on the mutants in X-Men. Speaking of the X-Men, are mutants in this world as well? If they do exist in this world, then Tom has to worry about kids with powers that they don't understand running around as well as the villains from those movies as well. That is once again if this world is the cinematic world. If it's not, then Tom is completely and utterly F***ed. I just need to explore a bit and see if things match up from the movies or comics. It's a good thing that I have the whole of Christmas break to look into this. Oh, wasn't the Ancient One in the comics a man? So, if I were to go to Kamar-Taj, I could find out if it's the comic world or the cinematic. Also, I could learn some pretty powerful sorcery if I play my cards right. Tom thought and smiled at the new plan coming into view before him. Seeing as in the movies Kamar-Taj was in Nepal, Tom sent Mimsy to buy him a portkey to and from there. He knew that there are sanctums all over the world, but Tom has no idea where they are. There's probably one in every major city, but at what address? Tom didn't know, so he would have to do things the hard way. By the time Mimsy arrived with the portkeys, it was already late, so Tom would set out tomorrow. The next morning, Tom did his usual exercises before leaving via portkey to Nepal. He appeared in a random side alley of a dirt street in Kathmandu, Nepal. As Tom didn't know the common language, he would walk in crowds of people and constantly ask where he could find Kamar-Taj. After a whole day of this, no one responded to him with any sort of answer. Knowing that this may take a while, Tom booked a nice hotel to get some sleep. He would wake up early the next day and repeat the same actions of today. Going from one crowd to another, hoping that someone knows where to go. I hope I can find this place soon. Although I am a bit scared of what the Ancient One will know about me. Tom thought as he drifted off to sleep in his nice hotel room. Chapter 27, C27 Kamar-Taj. A/N, want to read ahead of what I've posted so far? Go to my Patreon and get early access chapters. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 12 chapters ahead at chapter 39. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight. Follow at Warlord Alien on Twitter. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. After a week of constantly asking strangers where to find Kamar-Taj, Tom finally ran into someone that knew of something. He wasn't even looking for it at the time. Once Tom finished a long day of running around, he went to a food stand to get a quick bite to eat. While eating, he talked to the owner, who happened to speak English. Tom told the owner of how he was running around all day looking for a place called Kamar-Taj. To his complete surprise, the owner knew of someone that has mentioned a place with that same name. After speaking with someone that knew a guy, who knows another guy, that knows another guy. Finally, Tom was given an address in Kathmandu that hopefully lead to Kamar-Taj. Once he arrived at the address, he knocked on the door with hopeful vigor. The door opens and a bald man in robes answers the door. I would like to speak with the Ancient One, please. Tom asks, and the man's eyebrows knit together in confusion. She's not expecting you. The man mutters, barely audible enough for Tom to hear. She. This is looking good. Also, how is she not expecting me? She's supposed to see the different possible futures throughout time with her infinity stone. Tom thought as the monk before him had no idea what to do. Every time the Ancient One would have a guest, she would let the doorman know what to do beforehand. Whether to send them away or guide them inside. Never had someone come to see the Ancient One and she didn't inform them about it. Knowing that this was an odd anomaly, the monk guided Tom inside and brought him to a meeting room. Wait here. I'll inform the Ancient One of your arrival. He said and left the room. Mimsy. Tom called and his head elf appears with a pop. Yes. She answers happily. Can you get me some tea for 2 and some snacks to go with it? Tom asks and Mimsy snaps her fingers. A tea set appears on the table along with some assorted baked goods. Mimsy snaps her fingers again and the teapot moves to pour Tom a cup. Thank you, Mimsy. He thanks her and takes a small sip. It's perfect as usual. You can leave now. Thanks again. After Mimsy pops away with a happy smile, Tom didn't have to wait long for a bald woman dressed in robes to walk through the door. She entered the room excitedly with her eyes curiously scanning the room for her guest. Yes. She looks exactly the same as in the movies. It's looking like I'm in the MCU. This is so much better than the complete Marvel universe. Tom thought, happy that he wouldn't have to worry about unknown villains cropping up. Would you like some tea? He asks, copying how she would greet guests. Yes, I would love some. The Ancient One replies and sits across from Tom as he pours her a cup. I've been waiting for our meeting to take place. She says as she sips her tea. I thought you didn't see me coming. Tom asks. Oh, I didn't, but I could tell that the universe itself was hiding something from me. Blank spots in time that I couldn't see started appearing. As these blank spots started to appear, the possible futures started changing for the better. I wasn't sure if it would be you, but now that I've met you, I can tell 100% that it is you. You're the one that I can't see. I didn't think that you would be a wand waver though. Your kind has been in hiding for a long time. She says as she stares at Tom as a mathematician would look at an equation. Well, it's nice to know I'm protected from time snoopers. I'm Thomas Marvolo Riddle, but everyone calls me Tom. Tom says as he waits to see if she has a bad reaction to his name. If she does have a bad reaction, Tom may need to explain the merger to her. He can't have one of the most powerful people on planet Earth thinking he's some evil Dark Lord. After all, without the soul merge, Tom would have gone on to become a murderer, baby killer, rapist, and all-around piece of human garbage. You already know of me, but I'll say it anyway. I'm the Sorceress Supreme of planet Earth, but you may call me the Ancient One. She says and doesn't seem to react to Tom's full name at all. Once again, it's nice to meet you, Ancient One. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Tom asks and the Ancient One nods her head signaling him to ask away. How do you feel since you don't know how this conversation will go? It's completely and utterly refreshing. Not knowing what is going to happen next is both scary and freeing at the same time. She answers and continues to sip her tea. Can I ask a question? Sure, go ahead. Tom replies. How is it that I can't see you with the time stone? She asks, hoping for an answer to the problem that has plagued her. I'm sorry to say, but I have no idea. I have a bit of knowledge about the future myself, which is how I know about you, so I came here to learn everything I can about the mystic arts. Tom said as he thinks why he would be excluded from her vision of the future. It could be because of the merger, or any number of other weird possibilities. Tom thought, but he wouldn't reveal that to the Ancient One. I was hoping for some answers, but it's all right. She sighs but shrugs it off after a moment of thought. As for you learning here, that will have to come at a price, I'm afraid. She says as her demeanor becomes a lot more serious. If this is about protecting the Earth from mystical threats, then I'm willing to agree on 2 conditions. Tom says and the Ancient One motions for him to continue. It's fairly simple. You only call me when you absolutely need me. I don't have time to be called for every little threat to Earth's borders. If others can handle it, I don't want to be bothered. On the other hand, if others cannot handle a certain threat, I would be more than happy to help as much as I can. Your second condition? She asks. I want to be taught by you, personally. Tom states plainly. I accept your conditions. Welcome to Kamar-Taj, she agrees immediately. The Ancient One was more than happy with recruiting Tom under these conditions. For the first condition, many sorcerers can take Tom's place for easier threats, so that one wasn't very hard for her to agree to. As for Tom being taught by the Ancient One, she wants to be as close as possible to him, so she can figure out why she's unable to see him with the time stone. Thank you for having me, teacher. Tom says respectfully. Although, I'm attending Hogwarts at the moment, so I'll only be able to study here during breaks. I see, then we should get started immediately, shouldn't we? She says and Tom got a horrible feeling from her tone of voice. Open your mind. She says as she taps Tom on the forehead. Chapter 28, C28 Novice Sorcerer. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 12 chapters ahead at chapter 40. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight. Follow at Warlord Alien on Twitter. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. After going through the trippiest experience of his entire life, Tom was taken into Kamar-Taj as a student of the Ancient One. At first, the Ancient One asked if he had parents, as she didn't want to just take him from his family. She then learned that Tom is an orphan from London. They then tricked the matron into thinking Tom was accepted into a summer study program that he signed up for in Hogwarts. He was swiftly permitted to attend the program by an ecstatic matron. Now she doesn't have to worry about the children's safety all year round. He was given a white robe to identify him as a novice and a room to sleep in. A few of the masters under the Ancient One weren't very happy with taking in a child, but they could say nothing as Tom is one of the few personal students the Ancient One has ever taken. He also the only student currently studying under her at the moment. Openly badmouthing him would be very close to openly badmouthing the Ancient One herself. Although that was only a very minor amount of the more grumpy sorcerers. The majority accepted Tom with either indifference or open arms. Getting his room makes Tom remember the scene with the Wi-Fi password, and that makes him remember that he has no Wi-Fi. Why must the past be so cruel? When will I once again lay around all day watching YouTube and eating potato chips? Tom remembered the good old days. Time skipped January 3rd. Christmas break went by quickly as Tom spent the short time he had studying under the Ancient One. The Ancient One first sent him to the library to start studying dead languages. Tom wasn't allowed to learn anything until he could understand the material. With his perfect recall, learning every language thrown at him was fairly easy. From Latin, Sanskrit, Ancient Greek, to Biblical Hebrew, Tom knew them all after a few days' worths of reading. Of course, that doesn't mean he's any good at speaking them though. That will take some time and practice to get down. After getting the magic down, he was given private lessons from the Ancient One and a list of books to read for homework. He learned what their type of magic or sorcery is. It's fairly different from the Wizarding World's brand of magic. Magic for sorcerers is divided into 3 different categories: personal energies, universal energies, and dimensional energies. Supposedly, all magic is built on the concept that all realities can be reshaped by tapping into the existing power that is found in either themselves, the universe, or other dimensions. Personal energies are those derived from the life force of the sorcerer, which is different from wizards/witches as they are born with magic inside them and don't have to use life force to power anything. Personal energies can only be used to power abilities developed through mental studies and are thus limited to mental abilities such as astral projection, hypnotism, telekinesis, and telepathy. However, because it is known that the continual use of such energies will fatally deplete the individual by consuming their life force, sorcerers must also learn to harness external forces through meditation techniques and trained willpower. It is known that the students enrolled at Kunlun are trained to harness an internal force known as Qi as a means to strengthen their own minds and willpower, as well as their physical capabilities to varying degrees. One of the easier sources that a sorcerer can draw power from are the universal energies of their home dimension. Universal energies can be used for conjuration, transmutation, and teleportation purposes and are commonly used in battle to create shields and weapons of energy. Universal spells usually require specific gestures and/or words in order to be activated. Some universal energies can also be used by astral bodies who contain a dimensional anchor in the form of an artifact or an individual. For example, the Ancient One was able to force Tom's consciousness to safely travel throughout the multiverse and to return to their physical world by using herself as an anchor. This then sent Tom into the biggest LSD trip of both of his lives. Lastly, dimensional energies are those that are drawn from other planes of existence throughout the multiverse or are bestowed upon a sorcerer from one or more extra-dimensional entities. These entities must be entreated by a sorcerer using ritualistic spells and possibly a promise or sacrifice of some method. For example, Caecilius and his followers promised to give Dormammu access to the Earth dimension in exchange for eternal life and superior power. Speaking of Caecilius, he hasn't joined Kamar-Taj yet and Tom isn't even sure whether he's born already. Once their agreement had been made, Dormammu proceeded to bestow his power onto the zealots. However, the Ancient One has proven that some such dimensional energies can be channeled without the awareness or participation of the entities involved, as she successfully managed to siphon power from the dark dimension for hundreds of years without any allegiance or loyalty to Dormammu. Tom didn't talk about these things to her, as he didn't know how to bring it up. He was also sure that she was aware of what will and could happen in the future. Though Tom won't let his teacher die as she did in the movie, but to do that, he will need to get strong enough to sever her connection to the dark dimension and somehow keep her alive and kicking. That will be something he has to worry about sometime later on down the line. Now, Tom just has to focus on learning everything he can and put in some hard work. Most sorcerers, especially those that harness extra-dimensional energies, such as the masters of the mystic arts, train in the art of spellcasting, which was explained to Tom by the Ancient One as being conceptually the same as runes and array to alter the world around him. Achieving specific magical effects can require certain words, gestures, or rituals of some sort, while others may require the use of relics and other items imbued with supernatural power. Furthermore, these effects can be accompanied by the appearance of sigils, glyphs, runes, and mandalas, often in the form of projected constructs of energy. The first real practical lesson he had was about eldritch magic, and he has to practice writing some arrays in the air with it. He was put in a class filled with people 3 or more times his age, and they would constantly draw upon eldritch energy to make a circle in the air, then punch it away. The bigger your circle, the better you become at drawing that energy. Some people had tiny circles and others could make some as big as them. Those people would be moved into the next class up. Tom thought that this would be easy, as he has been using and studying a different brand of magic for a bit now. Boy was he wrong. He just had a hard time harnessing magic that wasn't inside of him. This speed bump didn't last long though, as Tom would work on drawing eldritch energy almost constantly. Hard work is the fastest way to success, and Tom is no stranger to hard work. He's been constantly studying and working his body and magic ever since the merger of souls. Adding one more thing to the list isn't going to stop him from moving forward. A day before Tom had to leave for Hogwarts, he was mindlessly trying to draw a circle in the air among his other novice disciples. Suddenly, a small spark appeared in the air in front of him as he moved his hand. At first, he thought he could be seeing things, but he did it again and a spark danced before his eyes. A blinding smile appeared Tom's his face at his accomplishment. He's been working at this same exercise for weeks and he finally harnessed and manipulated eldritch magic. Back to Hogwarts soon. From one school to the other. I need to find some time to take a vacation sooner or later. Chapter 29, C29 Meatheads. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 13 chapters ahead at chapter 42. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight. Follow at Warlord Alien on Twitter. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. Before leaving Kamar-Taj, Tom was able to get his circle to be about as big as his hand. The Ancient One was happy about his progress, but this is only a minor step down the long path of becoming a master of the mystic arts. A few days before leaving, Tom celebrated his 12th birthday. No one knew except Mimsy, who brought him a special cake and sang to him in his room. Tom decided to not tell anyone about his birthday as he wasn't one for celebrating it in either life. He still had no idea how Mimsy knew it was his birthday in the first place. What's funny is that both souls that merged actually had the same birthday. Upon leaving, Tom was sent off by his new teacher and a few of the friendly masters and disciples. Today is the day he has to take the train to Hogwarts, so he already had everything ready. Mimsy popped him to an empty alley by Kong's Cross and Tom finally was able to walk through the brick wall. It wasn't as thrilling as he thought it would be, but it was still an experience he would remember. On the train, he met up with his one and only friend, Druella. They talked about their workout plan and Druella was showing off some things she received for Christmas. They sat at the back of the train as not to be bothered by anyone. That didn't seem to work as a knock could be heard at the door when the train set off. Enter. Tom calls and Druella looks annoyed as she was in the middle of talking before the knock. The door opens and on the other side are the most annoying of the Slytherins Tom and Druella have had to deal with. Cornelian Crabbe and Gabriel Goyle. Both of them look like dumber versions of their grandchildren. They're in 5th year and the loudest of the people that badmouth Tom and Druella. The second they see Tom and Druella sitting peacefully in the compartment, their happy faces turn sour as they look down their noses at the 2 first years. Get lost, Rosier, and take your pet Mudblood with you on the way out. Meathead number 1 exclaimed as Meathead number 2 shooed them out of the compartment. Tom, seeing them being unreasonable, quirks an eyebrow at them. They haven't done anything like this before, but then again bullying usually escalates. This must be that escalation. First, verbal bullying, and now they want to start controlling where Tom and Druella are allowed to be. Sooner or later even that would escalate, so Tom needs to nip this in the bud right now. We were here first. Find another compartment or sit with us if you want, but we aren't leaving. Tom says casually as he reaches for his wand just in case. The 2 boys weren't expecting that, as they just stood there for a moment. They looked at each other for a moment and both didn't seem to be happy about what Tom said. Tom could practically hear what they were thinking. Something about Mudbloods not listening to their betters or something similar. I don't think you heard me. I said leave the compartment now. Muggle-born filth like you should just keep your mouth shut. Meathead number 1 repeats as his buddy nods along with every word. Asterisk sigh asterisk like I said before, we aren't going anywhere. If you want to sit with us, take a seat. If not then please go because you're interrupting our conversation. Tom says as nicely as possible with his wand hidden in his grasp. Tom's nice reply seemed to somehow anger them even further. Meathead number 1 went for his wand as his face is red with anger. Meathead number 2 wasn't expecting to draw his wand, so he was a bit behind his friend. As Meathead number 1 grasped his wand, Tom had already aimed his wand at him. Expelliarmus. Tom called and thunderous magical energy escaped Tom's wand and struck Meathead Crabbe, Meathead number 1. Crabbe's wand goes flying into Tom's open hand, and he immediately aims at Goyle, who was a bit slow in the draw. Before Tom could fire another spell, he hears Druella call out her own spell as well. Expelliarmus, she said, and Goyle's wand falls at her feet. Both Tom and Druella now had their wands trained on the two meatheads. Crabbe and Goyle wore stunned faces as they didn't expect to be bested so easily. Especially against a couple of first years. Not to mention, one of them is a mudblood that knew nothing of magic before his letter arrived. They wanted nothing more than to teach these kids a lesson, but without wands they're powerless. Now, they stand there without a clue as to what to do anymore. You can leave now. We'll be keeping your wands until we arrive at Hogwarts. There they will be delivered to Slughorn, along with an explanation of what happened here. Goodbye, Tom says as Druella picks up the wand at her feet. Both Tom and Druella haven't put down their wands, and they won't until Crabbe and Goyle leave. Meanwhile, Crabbe and Goyle just stood there, torn between their instincts to teach these kids a lesson and the fear of whatever spells they would fire at them if they tried anything. Seeing that neither of them was leaving, Tom looked over at Druella and they came to a nonverbal understanding. Both nodded at each other and aimed their wands at the intruders. Since you seem to have forgotten how to walk out of a door, let us give you a helping hand. Tom calls and they both call out a spell at the same time. Flipendo, they call and both aim at a different target. Tom's spell hits Crabbe and Druella's hits Goyle. The two fifth-years get sent flying out of the door and onto the hallway floor. Tom then casually walks to the door and closes it in their faces. Once the door is closed, Tom locks it and takes a seat next to Druella, who lets out an annoyed groan. You know this is going to cause problems, correct? Druella says in exasperation. Possibly, but I doubt the council will get involved. At least, not directly. Tom says after a moment of thought. But some things have to be done. I don't mind people talking sh*t about me. They don't matter to me and I could care less about whatever garbage spews from their mouths, but I won't be dictated on where to go and what to do. If we let them get away with that, situations like this would repeat. Yeah, but something will happen because of this. Druella says. True, but we'll be ready for whatever that might be. Chapter 30, C30 Inbred Faction. As of this chapter, the Patreon is 12 chapters ahead at chapter 42. I'll be writing and posting at least 2 chapters tonight. Follow at Warlord Alien on Twitter. Thanks for the Power Stones and enjoy the chapter. When the train arrived at Hogwarts, everyone took the carriages this time. While they were switching from the train to the carriages, Tom saw some members of the council with annoyed looks on their faces. Trailing behind them were Crabbe and Goyle with their heads down in submission. They must have told the council what happened. Druella says as she eyes Crabbe and Goyle. No, they most likely made themselves the victims. If you were them in the situation where they lost to a girl, no offense of course, and a mudblood, would you tell the truth? Hell no, they most likely made themselves the victim, but I doubt everyone on the council believes them. Tom says as he takes a seat next to Druella in the carriage. ***, this is so annoying. Druella says as they start riding towards the castle. Yeah. When they arrive at the castle, Dumbledore is there to meet everyone as usual. Everyone is brought to the Great Hall for a welcome-back feast. As everyone is settling in, Tom and Druella walk up to the staff table and ask to speak with their head of house in the halls. Slughorn happily agrees, as Tom is easily becoming one of his favorite students. His work is impeccable and every potion he brews has been nothing but flawless. As they step outside the Great Hall, Tom could feel the eyes on them from the Slytherin table. Tom then went on to explain what happened and handed over the wands they confiscated. Slughorn didn't look surprised, as he is the head of Slytherin House, and it's hard to miss 2 of his snakes being shunned by the rest. He simply sighed and said that he would take care of it. He also mentioned something about both Crabbe and Goyle being constant troublemakers. All right, go and fill your stomachs. I'll speak to Misters Goyle and Crabbe after the feast. Slughorn said as they all went back to the Great Hall to eat. After their meal, Crabbe and Goyle were called to Headmaster Dippet's office, along with Slughorn and Dumbledore. It was later learned that they were given detention for the rest of the school year for attempting to assault younger students. It was also said that if it were to happen again, they would be expelled from Hogwarts, which is something that will get you shunned from society. That must have scared them a bit, as they haven't bothered Tom and Druella since. Although, they still constantly badmouth Tom and Druella openly. As Tom thought, the council didn't call them for anything related to the incident on the train. Although, a few of the more outspoken blood purists have been becoming more and more hostile towards Tom and Druella. Nothing confrontational, but more and more each day Tom's and Druella's names repeatedly keeps coming out of their mouths. So much so, that a new faction within Slytherin House was created and Tom calls it the Inbred Faction. They mostly spew their racist opinions about Muggles, Muggleborns, and half-bloods. Not to say that the rest of Slytherin isn't racist, as they definitely are, but the Inbred Faction are the crazies that go a bit too far. It's good that this faction is usually ignored by the more sane Slytherins that are on the side of simply shunning Tom and Druella. Why waste their time with mudblood filth, after all? This was all fine and dandy to Tom and Druella. Tom could care less about what a bunch of inbreeds say, so as long as they left him alone, Tom would stay low for a bit longer. Druella was a bit annoyed at the Inbred Faction, but after some thought, she decided to follow Tom's lead and at least pretend to not care. Maybe someday she could learn how Tom could just brush stuff off so easily. Time skip, end of the first year. After a long year of breezing through classes, Tom finally finished his first year of Hogwarts. During the year, he continued to reign at the top of all first years in grades. When he wasn't in class, Tom would train and study with Druella. She has advanced in leaps and bounds since meeting Tom, so much in fact, that she could probably beat a sixth year in a duel. She attributes all of her growth to her friend Tom Riddle, of course. Becoming friends with him may have ruined her reputation, but he made up for it with his training regimen that she has been going through. Just the enhancement in her magic reserves was enough to sacrifice her reputation for. When Tom wasn't doing his training with Druella, he would sneak off into the ROR and spend his time dabbling with things not taught in Hogwarts. He mostly spent his time on dark magic and rituals, including runes and arrays, as they go along with rituals. This is where he left off before the Christmas break. Other than that, he continued his practice in eldritch magic as he did at Kamar-Taj. By the end of the first year, Tom could finally make a circle 2 times his size. Tom did try to spend some time on one other thing, and that was legilimency. The books he found in the ROR stated that legilimency is the act of magically navigating through the many layers of a person's mind and correctly interpreting one's findings. A person who practices this art is known as a legilimens. Muggles might call this mind reading, but practitioners disdain the term as naive. Tom sees it as more of mind surfing, as most people don't have organized minds. It's a mess in an untrained person's mind, and the only way to navigate is to surf. Tom learned this by constantly practicing on passing younger Muggleborns in the hallway. Every time a Muggleborn would make eye contact with him, Tom would activate his legilimency and see what he could find. After a few mess-ups where a few kids fainted in the halls, Tom started getting this mind-reading thing down. Tom wasn't doing it out of spite towards the Muggleborns, but they haven't had a chance to study occlumency, so they wouldn't be able to tell it was happening. Like this, Tom learned that reading someone's mind is hard and you have to surf through a bunch of nonsense information to get to what you want. On the other hand, people with an organized mind would be easier to get information from. Although, that person's mind would also be protected, so that isn't necessarily true. A goodbye feast took place and Slytherin won the useless House Cup. Many of the saner in Slytherin House knew that Tom was the main reason they won the House Cup. They wouldn't say it out loud or thank him for it, but they knew. After a long train ride back to King's Cross, Tom found a nice alleyway, where he called for Mimsy. She popped him to the London Sanctum, and there he was brought to Kamar-Taj. The second he got into a meeting with the Ancient One, Tom showed off how big his circle had become. It may be something minor to the Ancient One, but never has Tom had to work so hard in magic before. He was proud of his hard work and ready to move on to the next step.